older, there are many challenges that we have to confront, but these years can represent the best in our lives. Coming of Age during Nationwide This Morning on Thursdays explores issues persons 50 and over confront. It also provides expert opinions on how we can improve the quality of our lives as we get older. That's Coming of Age, this and every Thursday during Nationwide This Morning at 6:51 a.m.
Ready to tackle that building project? Start right. Start here at H&L Rapid True Value for building supplies. The time by H&L Rapid True Value is
Nationwide time, 5 o'clock.
Learn about smart betting strategies with AnyBet. Bet wisely, enjoy responsibly, and maximize your success. The temperature by AnyBet is
29 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 28 in Montego Bay.
News at 5 teasers are brought to you by Advanced Scales and Equipment. Service is our total commitment.
From the Nationwide News Network, comprehensive, incisive, tough. This is Nationwide at 5.
Good afternoon, I'm Roby-Ann Williams.
And I'm Mahiri Stewart.
In Nationwide News at this hour, the government plans to spend nearly $500 billion on public sector compensation in the upcoming fiscal year.
PricewaterhouseCoopers endorses the government's plan to accelerate capital allowances for business.
We are making a special provision for accelerated capital allowance on industrial and non-industrial commercial buildings, plant and machinery.
The Jamaica Employers Federation hails the gradual increase to the income tax threshold.
From 1.7 million to 2 million over 3 years signals that the working Jamaican who is earning 2 million can now get that relief.
Domestic violence victim pleads for urgent help from authorities to bring her abuser to justice.
In news from the rest of the world, Caribbean leaders stand firm against U.S. visa threats over Cuban medical programs.
Trump pledges more EU tariffs in trade war.
In headline sports, captain John Campbell hit a century for Jamaica's Scorpions in the regional 4-day championships against the West Indies Academy.
And later in our broadcast, Wednesday, March 12, 2025, in our cover story at 5:35, Fayval Williams outlined a raft of good news for Jamaican citizens and no new taxes for the 8th consecutive year as she delivered her first budget presentation as the country's finance minister.
We come to the people of Jamaica with a balanced budget and no new taxes.
Minister Williams will join us.
In Public Opinion at 6:26, we ask, what was your highlight from Fayval Williams' budget presentation? Give us your comments by logging on to our Facebook page, Nationwide News Network, and by tweeting us at Nationwide Radio and message us on WhatsApp at 876-285-5693. You can also leave your comments on Instagram at Nationwide 90FM.
In the nation's business at 6:40, the Independent Fiscal Commission has released its first economic and fiscal assessment report. Commissioner Courtney Williams will join us to look through the report.
At 7, new rules imposed by the U.S. will prevent Jamaica from hosting Cuban healthcare workers. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton will join us to discuss the impact of this new policy.
And at 8, it's Boyatings After Dark with Kareem Boyatings Weathers.
All these and more as we take you home on air on your mobile, Nationwide 90FM, Nationwide Radio JM.com, and on the Nationwide app, available on Google Play and the App Store. This Wednesday afternoon, it's Wednesday, March 12, 2025.
News at 5 teasers were brought to you by Advanced Scales and Equipment. Service is our total commitment.
If it's news, it's got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
Now the details. The government plans to spend nearly $500 billion for public sector compensation in the upcoming financial year. Minister of Finance Fayval Williams says the sum also facilitates a critical expansion of the public sector.
Compensation for government employees is in the budget at $495.8 billion, and it includes new rates of pay for medical consultants, dental surgeons, parish court judges and probation aftercare officers, back pay for medical consultants and parish court judges, an allocation to support the employment of agricultural wardens, $1 billion to support continuation of the Jamaica National Service Corps, and a compensation contingency provision of $33 billion to meet the cost of public sector wage settlement, including a provision of $3 billion to support the filling of vacant technical positions in regional health authorities.
The minister made the announcement as she opened the 2025-2026 budget debate in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. She says the figure represents a 20% increase in the country's public sector wage bill compared to the $414 billion for the current fiscal year. The continued increase in the cost of public sector compensation and its impact on revenues remains one of the top concerns of the country's fiscal monitors. They've called for a capping of public sector wages as a percentage of GDP. However, the minister is reminding the country that this mechanism was designed in a period when the country was significantly worse off.
At the time of implementation of the wage to GDP cap of each year, our national debt stood at 147% of GDP, and inflation was 9.1%. Contrast this, Madam Speaker, to a debt to GDP of 68.7% that we expect to see when we close this fiscal year, as opposed to that 147% debt to GDP when the rule was put in place. Following all of that, in 2022, this administration abolished the wage to GDP cap in order to address retention issues, wage freezes, and historical underpayment in the public sector.
Favour Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, she says other fiscal rules currently exist that ensure government spending is sustainable.
And Minister Williams sought to assure Jamaicans that the budget will be sustainably funded despite the election year pressures.
I know that we all know that this is an election year, but I do know as well that Jamaicans have grown to know that as a government we are committed to remain disciplined. We would not throw away the hard-won gains of the people of Jamaica, Madam Speaker, not even to win an election. So how will the budget for fiscal year 2025-26 be funded? The central government budget will be funded with $949.5 billion of tax revenues, $139.8 billion of non-tax revenues, $812 million of bauxite levy, and $5.96 billion of grants.
The minister also says the country is projected to generate a modest surplus at the end of the next fiscal year. She contrasted this with the years upon years of negative balances under previous PNP administrations.
In terms of the debt payment, we have $162.7 billion of debt that comes due in fiscal year 2025-26. We forecast loan receipts of $158.4 billion, and we expect to pay the difference from our own resources. This upcoming fiscal year 2025-26, we are projecting a surplus, a small surplus, but it sure be the negative.
Favour Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service.
One of the country's leading auditing and assurance firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, has endorsed the government's plans to accelerate capital allowances for business. The firm published its commentary on Wednesday following Finance Minister Favour Williams' maiden budget presentation the day before. However, PwC is calling for better particulars on the initiative, along with funding arrangements for the 3-year phase-in of the $2 million income tax threshold. Siobhan Campbell has that story.
A capital allowance is essentially a tax discount for businesses when they purchase large-scale long-term inputs such as machinery and buildings. For example, if a bakery buys a new oven, its capital allowance permits it to make only partial tax payments on the item over an extended period rather than the full amount up front. This is with the expectation the company will have the asset for a long time. As part of her budget debate presentation, Minister Williams outlined plans to enhance that allowance over the next 2 years to boost economic growth.
Madam Speaker, as a government, we would like to see greater investments among our companies. And so we are making a special provision for accelerated capital allowance on industrial and non-industrial commercial buildings, plant and machinery, which includes automatic data processing equipment. And this will be over a 2-year period. We are encouraging companies to take the opportunity to upgrade their machinery, their ITC infrastructure, their industrial buildings to help expand their output so that we can move the GDP growth rate to higher levels.
The minister says in some instances that rate will nearly triple in year 1.
For plant and machinery, currently the initial capital allowance is 25% over the initial year is 25%. The period for the capital allowance for machinery is 8 years under the current regime, so the annual capital allowance will be 12.5%. We are moving that to 40% in year 1.
According to PwC, given the significant proposed temporary enhancement in rates, they expect manufacturers, producers, and other commercial enterprises to take advantage and invest and retool their businesses in 2025 and 2026. However, they want clarification as to whether it includes expenditure on the purchase, construction, and renovation of assets. PwC anticipates that the program will result in a more accelerated tax shelter and a reduction in income tax payable in earlier years. It says the overall impact should be significant and may result in some taxpayers generating tax losses after claiming the accelerated allowances. Meanwhile, PwC is criticizing some aspects of the adjustment of the personal income tax threshold. The measure will have the effect of removing nearly 30,000 persons from the government's tax roll over the next 3 years. This is at the cost of $14 billion in lost government revenue. PwC says administratively increasing the threshold with the effect from April 1 creates greater challenges for employers who are then required to make mid-year adjustments to payroll systems. The auditing firm also says it remains to be seen how this threshold increase will be funded over the next 3 years. Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
The Jamaica Employers Federation, JEF, has hailed the gradual increase to the income tax threshold as a much-needed break for middle-income earners. Finance Minister Fayval Williams made the announcement during her budget presentation in Parliament on Tuesday. JEF President Wayne Chen says the move is a step in the right direction.
I think it's a very good move. Jamaica has long leaned on the PAYE contributors to take really a big part of the tax burden. It has become over the years a tax on formal employment and has had the unintended consequence of allowing a lot of people to stay in informality. Moving the income tax threshold from 1.7 million to 2 million over 3 years signals that the working Jamaican who is earning 2 million can now get that relief.
The first phase of the threshold will be increased to $1.8 million effective April 1 this year. It will then be further adjusted to $1.9 million on April 1, 2026, and a final adjustment to $2 million on April 1, 2027. This means Jamaicans earning $2 million or less annually will pay no income taxes. Mr. Chen says the move will motivate more Jamaicans to seek formal employment.
And that is squarely into what I call the working middle class. And it's a good move in terms of, again, formalizing the contract of employment and making people feel comfortable to go and work in the formal sector.
Wayne Chen, president of the JEF.
You're listening to Nationwide News at 5. More news after these.
Rentokil Initial offers air purification solutions with triple filtration and unique auto-sensing capabilities that neutralizes malodor and replaces it with clean air. Call Rentokil Initial at 926-4236 for more details.
The temperature by Rentokil is
29 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 28 out west in Montego Bay.
I pursue opportunities.
I prepare for opportunities.
I plan for opportunities.
With Sagicor e-Invest, you can prepare, plan for and pursue IPO opportunities. Browse IPOs, review IPO details and prospectuses. Select and apply for a featured IPO. With Sagicor e-Invest. Think wealth. Visit sagicor.com.
Continuing the news, political and social commentator Dr. Nadine Spence says the initiatives announced by Finance Minister Favour Williams in her budget presentation signaled that she identified with the plights of ordinary Jamaicans and intended to fix them. Dr. Spence also singled out Minister Williams' announcement about the $10 billion in support to the National Water Commission.
Hearing her talk about emphasis on water as a rural woman, that's important to us. And hearing her connect to that story, because a lot of people in Kingston don't recognize that so many people in Jamaica struggle over water issues. And when you hear a recognition for women and that talk about how you carry water, I never used to carry water because I had a tank in my yard and my tank wasn't leaking. But there were a lot of people who had to carry water on their head, and a government that is emphasizing changing the water dynamics in a very tangible way. Not just talking about it in a very esoteric kind of theoretical way, but talking about putting money behind ensuring that people get water. I think people are going to be excited by that.
Dr. Spence also singled out Minister Williams' announced changes to the Student Loan Bureau SLB. This include overhauling the SLB to provide housing, meals and a laptop to potential borrowers. The government is also looking to lower the interest rates to make it easier for Jamaicans repaying the agency. Minister Williams also announced that effective September 2025, new borrowers will have the opportunity to repay the SLB for an extended period of 10 years. Dr. Spence says some of her students who she encouraged to watch the budget debate were heartened by the announcement about the changes coming to the SLB.
One student said, Miss, I think I'm going to go away and cry now because I have struggled so much with trying to figure out school fees, because I manage Mary C. Cole Hall, and Mary C. Cole Hall, which is one of the traditional halls, fees just went to 300,000 for the year, and there are a lot of students who can't afford that. We had to implement a program where students could rent a laptop, who couldn't afford to, would rent a laptop, borrow a laptop from the library. So there are a lot of students who I have forms on my desk now where students are applying for meal grants and bursaries from the UWI to help them to survive on a daily basis. So I think young people heard that yesterday and they felt seen and felt heard.
Dr. Nadine Spence, political and social commentator.
And President of the Small Business Association of Jamaica, SBAJ, Garnet Reid, says while Minister Williams delivered a good presentation, more financial assistance could have been provided for the small business sector.
The minister, I think, delivered a good presentation. We was a little disappointed that she didn't go further for more help and assistance to the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. But one of the things I must commend her on is that $2 billion will be allocated to the small business sector. Good move. We think it could be more, but we have to work with what we get. She mentioned about $10 billion will be allocated to the National Water Commission. Good move to our small business operator that in the juice business who use a lot of water. Good move for them. She mentioned about the junior market, which is a good move. Long in waiting, but better late than never.
According to the SBAJ, there are an estimated 422,000 registered small businesses in Jamaica. It says these businesses generate 80% of the jobs in the local economy. The SBAJ says, in summary, over 1.1 million Jamaicans are employed by a micro, small, or medium enterprise MSME. In her budget presentation, Minister Williams also announced an increase in the GCT exemption for MSMEs from $10 million to $15 million. Mr. Reid says other measures can be taken to provide help for small businesses that were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
There's other things that I would love her to speak on. Still not too late because she will be closing her budget presentation and she including grant for small business operator. You know that during Corona, there is a lot of small business companies have been closed, hundreds of them. To date, some of them still not yet open. And a grant perhaps could help to put them back on their foot.
Garnet Reid, president of the Small Business Association of Jamaica.
World in a Minute is brought to you by ABC Electrical Sales. We make things as easy as ABC. Hose assembly and supply, equipping Jamaica for success.
And Charles O'Connor Consulting Network, COCN, driven by international accounting standards, modern technology and integrity.
The World in a Minute.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has joined several Caribbean leaders in rejecting a policy by the U.S. for foreign officials to abandon Cuban medical missions. Dr. Gonsalves says he's willing to sacrifice his U.S. visa rather than abandon critical Cuban medical missions in his country. His statement comes in response to the U.S.'s warning that countries involved in the Cuban labor export program could face visa restrictions. Dr. Gonsalves dismissed any claims that his government exploits Cuban doctors or engineers. He noted that without Cuban medical professionals, St. Vincent's healthcare system would suffer. Dr. Gonsalves is not alone in his stance. Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has declared that he's willing to forego future trips to the U.S. in defense of his country's sovereignty. Similarly, Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown has firmly rejected the move. He warned that any action against the initiative could severely disrupt healthcare in the Caribbean.
U.S. President Donald Trump has openly challenged the allies of the U.S. on Wednesday by increasing tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports to 25%. Trump vowed to take back wealth stolen by other countries, drawing quick retaliation from Europe and Canada. The Republican president's use of tariffs to extract concessions from other countries points toward a possibly destructive trade war and a stark change in America's approach to global leadership. It has also destabilized the stock market and stoked anxiety about an economic downturn. Trump removed all exemptions from his 2018 tariffs on the metals, in addition to increasing the tariffs on aluminium from 10%. The EU announced its own countermeasures on $28 billion worth of goods from the US. Those measures, which cover textiles, home appliances, and agricultural goods, are due to take effect on April 1.
World in a Minute was brought to you by ABC Electrical Sales. We make things as easy as ABC. Hose assembly and supply, equipping Jamaica for success.
And Charles O'Connor Consulting Network, COCN, driven by international accounting standards, modern technology and integrity.
Recapping the top stories making nationwide news at this hour, the government plans to spend nearly $500 billion on public sector compensation in the upcoming financial year.
And the government says the 2025-2026 budget will be sustainably funded despite the election year pressures.
PricewaterhouseCoopers endorses the government's plans to accelerate capital allowances for business.
The Jamaica Employers Federation hails the gradual increase to the income tax threshold.
I'm Robeanne Williams.
And I'm Mahiri Stewart.
You can find the news on our website at nationwideradiojm.com and on the Nationwide app, available on Google Play and the App Store. News next, the headlines at 6.
Win with love. Use your JMMB Money Transfer Prepaid Visa Card from October 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025 for a chance to win your share of a $2.1 million grand prize. plus a $100,000 university cash grant and cash back from paying tolls and shopping with your card. Receive money 24/7 in minute with Visa Direct via MoneyGram, Zoom, Remitly, or directly through Ria and Zoom. Visit jm.jmmb.com/money-transfer for full details on how to enter and win with love. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act. Conditions apply.
Attention motorists, it's time to switch to the T-Tag on Trans-Jam highways. The T-Tag system reduces the amount of cash handled at our toll plazas and makes it safer for our staff and motorists at the toll booths. The T-Tag makes it quicker, more cost-efficient, and safer for our customers. So switch to the T-Tag today and experience the convenience. T-Tag packages are discounted to only $1,500, including a $500 toll credit from now until March 31st.
Sports at 5 is brought to you by Total Tools. They almost always have it.
Good afternoon with your sports reporter. I'm Alric Swaby. We bowl things off with some cricket as Jamaica Scorpions reached 332 for 7 at Stumps on day 1 of the West Indies Regional 4-Day Championships against the West Indies Academy at Coolidge Cricket Ground. Captain John Campbell made 101, Javel Glenn 68, Odin Smith 51, and Jermaine Blackwood 31. Brad Barnes 44 and Javoy Royal 4 of the not-out batsmen. Jediah Blades and Akeem August has so far taken 2 wickets each. Over at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, the Leeward Islands Hurricanes reached 367 for 5 against the combined campuses and colleges. Joel Andrew made 122, while Justin Greaves is unbeaten on 104. Shamar Holder has so far taken 2 wickets. Windward Islands Volcanoes in their rain-affected match reached 77 for 2 against the Guyana Harper Eagles at Providence Stadium. Jeremy Solozano, 43, and Captain Alec Athanez, 9, are the not-out batsmen. And Trinidad and Tobago reached 181 for 4 in their match against Barbados Pride at Kensington Oval. Camille Puran made 60 and Amir Django is unbeaten on 37. Earlier, Barbados were bowled out for 86. Kamara Roach top scored with 21. Anderson Phillips took 4 for 36. Joshua James picked up 3 wickets and Jaden Seals 2. Captain of the West Indies senior men's T20 team, Rovman Powell, does not agree with a sentiment that Test cricket is dead. Powell has played 51 one-day internationals for the West Indies, scoring 979 runs. He has so far played 84 T20 internationals, making 1,544 runs and 383 runs from 13 tests. Powell, who made his ODI debut against Sri Lanka on November 16, 2016, says he had to drop one of the game's format. To make the cricket calendar manageable, he would have to do away with the 50-over game.
If I should drop one, I would drop 50-over cricket. I think Test cricket is the pinnacle of cricket, and T20 cricket is a format that is revolutionizing cricket. You know, it has become one of the formats that fans, young and old, love dearly. But if you are a true cricket lover, then Test cricket. So I would take out the middle guy, which is 50-over cricket.
Powell says he would change one rule in T20 cricket.
One thing I don't like about T20 cricket is the impact rule. I'm not really a big fan of the impact rule. I don't think 12 persons should be taking part in a game. You know, I think it should be 11 versus 11 and not necessarily how they use the impact rule. One thing I like about T20 cricket is how fast-paced it is and how quick the game can change. You know, in the blink of an eye, a T20 game is won or lost.
Rovman Powell. Now to football, as Argentina football wizard Lionel Messi will fly into Kingston tonight with the rest of his Inter Miami team for the crucial CONCACAF Champions Cup clash with Cavalier at the National Stadium on Thursday. Inter Miami coach Javier Mascherano told a press conference in Florida on Wednesday ahead of the team's departure that Messi will travel with the team.
Messi will travel with us tonight with the team, and we will see tomorrow if he will start the game or not. That will be a decision that we have to take, but that decision we are going to take tomorrow, no, not today.
There had been speculation over whether the 8-time Ballon d'Or winner would make it, given that he has not played for the club in its last 3 games, including the 2-0 win over Cavalier in the first leg. Inter Miami are due in the island on Wednesday evening at 6 and will not stage a training session before the game. They need only a draw to make it to the quarterfinals and can even afford a 1-0 defeat. Meanwhile, Technical Director of Cavalier, Rudolph Speed, says going up against some of the world's best players will put Jamaica and Caribbean football on show.
What we need is for people to recognize Jamaica football, the Caribbean football, that we're improving, and open the door for some of our players too. For other clubs, to think that our players could be important for them to acquire.
Rudolph Speed, I'm Alex Swiby, that's your sports.
Sports at 5 was brought to you by Total Tools. They almost always have it.
Since 2016, 156,000 more Jamaicans are working. This is more than any other time in our history. Your government is caring for you.
The time brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister is
5:30.
For women standing tall and strong, Sagicor celebrates International Women's Day all month long. For her day, her deals. 7,500 bonus points on new Sagicor Bank credit cards. Special rates on auto loans and mortgages. Discounted trading fees from Sagicor Investments. A free dash cam or tire inflator with Ultimate Woman Auto Insurance from Advantage General Insurance. Plus, tailored products like our Sagicor Life Total Woman Life Insurance Plan. Accelerate action towards financial empowerment. Call 888 Sagicor. Conditions apply.
Fall in love with a new Mazda. From now until March 31, drive away an elegant CX-60, a majestic CX-90, or a nimble CX-5 and get a 2-year service package, 1 year free insurance, free license and registration, plus free window tinting. Conditions apply. Give in to temptation. Visit Executive Motors today. Mazda. Love at first drive.
Stop buying expensive toner cartridges. Global Ink is now selling new factory direct generic toners. Remove factory seals, install and print. Engineered to work first time, every time. Certified for use in HB and Brother printers. Worry-free, affordable printing for your peace of mind. Money saved is money earned. We deliver island-wide. 754-7444 or 1-888-NEED-INK. Never run out of toner again. Global Ink.
Don't fall victim to deepfakes.
Watch out.
Protect yourself.
How are this the
For more
TV?
information, visit broadcastingcommission.org or
Here ya,
scan
baby.
the QR code on screen.
Deepfake. No deepfake can't catch me.
Junior, you know say AI can make something will look and sound just like you? One day Junior get a voice note from her granny. Say the food done, the medication done, and she need money urgently.
Need money urgently? But Miss Pat no like ask people for things.
And as so comes Judy get suspicious.
So what she do?
She asks the neighbor fi go check pan her. Junior, the lady quite alright over there make her Sunday dinner.
So the voice note a deepfake?
Yes, my love. Come, your food ready.
Right now it look like we have to outsmart the AI. But wait. I really want dege dumpling here, give me.
Me I wonder if AI can make one deep fake dumpling for you.
To learn more about deepfakes, visit www.broadcastingcommission.org.
For women standing tall and strong, Sagicor celebrates International Women's Day all month long. For her day, her deals. 7,500 bonus points on new Sagicor Bank credit cards. Special rates on auto loans and mortgages. Discounted trading fees from Sagicor Investments. A free dash cam or tire inflator with Ultimate Woman Auto Insurance from Advantage General Insurance. Plus, tailored products like our Sagicor Life Total Woman Life Insurance Plan. Accelerate action towards financial empowerment. Call 888 Sagicor. Conditions apply.
Tune in to Cliff Views Online from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. as we broadcast live from the annual Speed Networking event at the Montego Bay Convention Center Thursday, March 13. This one-day event brings together top decision makers from local supplier companies and leading tourism entities like hotels, attractions, restaurants, and more. This year's event will feature a variety of manufacturers in categories like entertainment, furniture and bedding, food and beverage, fresh produce, aromatherapy, and so much more. So tune in to Cliff Views Online from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Come and engage in some speed networking at the Montego Bay Convention Center on March 13. All this and more only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the Tourism Enhancement Fund.
Cover Story is brought to you by Hyundai. Modern, premium, affordable vehicles.
Experience the joy of buying a brand new Hyundai without breaking the bank. Yes, buying a brand new car should never leave you broke. From stylish designs and safety features to comfortable driving and reliability, Hyundai is the choice. Hyundai vehicles come standard with 2 years free service and 5 years warranty and roadside assistance for your peace of mind. Drive 2 years without service cost and 5 years without fear of being stranded. Hyundai. Conditions apply.
Good afternoon, listeners and viewers. Welcome to the Cover Story. It is the 12th of March, one day after Minister of Finance Favour Williams delivered her budget presentation. I'm Siobhan Campbell.
And my name is Sanjay Lewis, and that's going to be the focus of our cover story this afternoon. And as Siobhan indicated, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Favour Williams, opened the 2025-2026 budget debate in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. She outlined more than 20 initiatives to grow the economy and provide a range of financial incentives to Jamaicans. Among the major initiatives is a phased increase of the income tax threshold.
That's right, listeners. The income tax will be abolished for Jamaicans earning up to $2 million. It will be phased in over the next 3 years. Minister Williams also slammed the opposition PNP for what she says are calls for reckless spending to satisfy short-term wants. According to her, there are attempts to get the Holness government to utilize the country's net international reserves, that's NIR, in order to alleviate the current economic hardships.
But she rejected these calls as irresponsible as she opened the budget debate as the country's first female Minister of Finance and the Public Service. Meanwhile, Minister Williams emphasized the administration's commitment to prudent fiscal management, contrasting it with previous run-with-it approaches, and underscored the importance of maintaining economic stability. The budget includes allocations for new pay rates for medical consultants, dental surgeons, and parish court judges, reflecting the government's focus on the public sector compensation. So for the 8th consecutive year, no new taxes were announced. Minister Williams joins us now. Good afternoon, Minister.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Minister Williams.
Good afternoon.
Wonderful. Minister, I want to start with a comment made yesterday by Antoinette Hamilton. She was speaking on Nationwide at 5, and she's the president of the MSME Alliance. And she stated that while the budget presentation included some good initiatives, it did not sufficiently address the needs of the MSME sector. And she specifically expressed concerns about the lack of measures to improve access to financing and lowering the interest rates from banks. And she feels the government is not listening to the concerns of that sector. How do you respond to those criticisms, Minister?
We are listening, and I will continue to engage with the sector. I will speak to her specifically about the issues of the members. We're listening, and what we did, the $2 billion allocation to DBJ, that's going towards MSMEs. Mm-hmm. I heard from MSMEs how difficult it is to open an account. They feel that they're treated the same way as a large business in terms of the requirements. That is something I've made a call for, to sit with my colleague minister and the MSME and the bank to see how that process can be simplified for MSME. The increase in the GCT threshold is to help MSMEs, and I know not all of them would want to take that up. It depends on how much, it depends on your business and how much GCT input there is. But for those who have service businesses, I am sure it will be beneficial to them. So this, we will continue to listen and as best as we can to provide for the sector, because I recognize where the jobs are, of this economy. The MSME sector has been responsible for generating most of those jobs. So, of course, we have to listen to them and take into consideration their needs as well in this whole growth picture.
One of the things she indicated, Minister, is that the very $2 billion that is going through the DBJ, she says that it's lacking in context. And she also indicated that the access is difficult. And because of that, even though the money is made available through the DBJ, the members are not taking it up. And she provided a solution, saying, why not remove the DBJ fees from the loan facilities, price it in the fees that they can pay over time instead of having to pay that lump sum at the beginning?
Okay, so that's a suggestion that I will certainly take up with the DBJ to see what they can do on that front. I have no problem taking up that suggestion with them and to see what can be done. And in listing what was in the budget as well, I forgot to mention the development of the micro market that is especially targeted to MSMEs, those that are not yet at the $50 million mark that can access the junior market. We are creating a new market for them to be able to access equity financing. And as you heard, the general manager of the stock exchange says there are about 250 companies right now that for whom a micro market listing is possible. So those, I thought those were big things for the sector. But obviously, we have to continue to listen and continue to see what new initiatives, other new initiatives that we can bring forward.
Minister, I think one of the problems that the small businesses face right now, it's not that these initiatives aren't useful, it's the immediacy of them, and many of these initiatives are still in the pipeline to come. I think her concern, at least how she voiced it, was that one of the things that can be acted upon almost immediately is interest rates, and she keeps hammering this point home that they would love to see some alleviation on the matter of interest rates. Do you feel there's any room for the government of Jamaica to maneuver, considering how our legislative framework is set up, considering the BOJ is now a completely independent entity? You can't really control the financial markets in that manner. But do you think there's any room for the government to put additional pressure to bring interest rates down?
So that's a conversation with the banks. I would love to understand, and I'm going to meet with them to understand their portfolio of loans to the MSMEs and to hear from them as well, and to see if there's any meeting of the minds that can happen there. You know, I know when they talk about interest rate, they tend to look at their entire portfolio, and so you don't get a sense of for the different sectors what the interest rate really is. And I want to zero in on the MSME part of their portfolio to understand those rates there and to see what else can be done, what can be created, how can the MSMEs be facilitated.
The opposition minister has criticized the budget, calling for greater spending to address economic hardships. And you have described these calls as reckless. Why do you believe their proposals would be fiscally responsible?
Well, I challenge you to challenge them to explain how they would fund whatever initiative they come out with. We, as a government, we are fiscally responsible. We do not want to get into the habit of deficit spending. That was what took us into the hole from which we are just about crawling out. When you talk about why is it that we've not been able to grow faster than the 1 or 2%, that's because we are carrying a load of debt. Did you hear how much we have to pay in interest? $176 billion, I think was the number, if I'm remembering correctly. That is a lot of money that's not going towards growth activity. And when you look at when was the debt created, It was created during the time of the opposition. People need to understand that. So to come now and talk about, they're going to do all these things, challenge them to tell you how are they going to pay for those things.
Stay with us, Minister. We are up on a break.
Clear your barrels and personal shipments with ease and convenience. Request a customs contactless clearance today through CCP at jca.gov.jm. The time by the Jamaica Customs Agency is...
It's 5:44.
March into savings with ATL's March Madness Sale. Get up to 50% off select appliances, electronics, and hard-to-find parts all month long. Upgrade your home and business with everything you need at unbeatable prices and best quality brands. Shop in store at Kingston, Ocho Rios, and Montego Bay, or beat the traffic and buy online at atljamaica.com and get island wide delivery. ATL, the best brands and the best service. Sale ends March 31 while stocks last. Conditions apply.
It's tax season. Time to reach for your checkbook or dole out the cash. Or maybe not. Discover an easier way to pay your taxes. Use your Sagicor Bank Business Credit Card. You'll get a 1-month payment holiday, up to 55 days interest-free, and unlimited rewards points on every dollar you spend. Discover how easy and convenient it is to pay your taxes with your Sagicor Bank Business Credit Card. Don't have a Sagicor Bank Business Credit Card? Visit Sagicor.com to apply for yours today. Conditions apply.
Digicel, live life your way, no free what? Digicel postpaid. With Digicel postpaid, it's all about you. Sign up or pay your bills to stay active for a chance to win a luxurious all-expense paid trip for two to Royalton, Antigua. With round-trip flights on us, every week you could win exciting prizes. Event tickets, gym memberships, spa packages, excursion adventures, restaurant vouchers, and more. When you opt in on the My Digicel app, life your way starts now with Digicel. Better connected.
Promotion ends March 31. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Staying with us here on Nationwide at 5. We're inside the cover story and we're speaking with the Minister of Finance, Fayval Williams. And just before the break, Minister, we touched on the matter of the opposition and you labeled their call as being reckless. One of the concerns that I've heard from some sectors within the country is the matter of the income tax threshold. And with the income tax being abolished for those earning up to $2 million over 3 years, what are the alternative revenue streams the government will consider to offset this potential revenue loss?
Before I answer your question, just let me make a correction on the interest payment. I understated it. It's $177.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so to your question now, what
Yes.
are...
How is it that we are going to fund that shortfall that's going to come in the budget now, giving up so much money with the abolition of the income tax being abolished for those earning up to $2 million and over the 3-year period?
Remember that our tax revenues are growing as well. So it will come from that. We're also looking at having some non-tax items in the budget as well, but each year we've seen a growth in our tax revenues, and I believe it's because of the way the fiscal affairs of this country is being managed. It's giving persons and companies more confidence in the economy. You've seen where inflation has been, well behaved within the target that we've set. It's a very transparent process. People have formed an expectation of low inflation, and they take actions accordingly. So you don't push up prices, you don't do this, you don't do that. And so there is a sense in the economy, among businesses, among individuals, that I can plan for the long term. And you see that reflected in just a steady increase in the taxes that are collected in the normal course of business. As the economy expands as well, you will see additional tax revenues coming in. So we are managing within the context of what is produced by the economy without having to lay on top of it additional a debt to deal with some of these things.
And that's where I'd like to take you, Minister. This matter of growing the tax revenues, obviously, in order to maintain this phased-in approach of the $2 million threshold, tax compliance and tax collection is going to be key. Are there any specific measures being outlined to assist TAJ in those measures?
Well, I know that we're currently in a measure, the special arrears measure for those who have principal amounts that have been overdue for some time, and those amounts have grown because of the penalties and interest charges and so on. And we're saying to taxpayers, come and speak with the TAJ. We're giving you a reprieve on the interest that has been accruing, on the penalties, and so on. So come and, get cleaned up, if you will. It's wipe the slate clean, pay the outstanding principal amount, and begin a new chapter in terms of tax payment.
And just to further on that same point of tax collection, as you said, the measures being phased in 1.8, 1.9 to 2 million. I note a criticism from the PwC is that the way we approach this matter of income threshold adjustments in the middle of the tax collection, the tax compliance season, should we not now change that to put it in line with the normal fiscal year processes?
But it is in line with the normal fiscal year processes. It begins April 1.
Well, but for many businesses, that's the middle of their tax period. That's the middle of the TAJ's tax period as well.
Maybe I'm not understanding your question.
Let me explain it properly then. Clearly, I'm not informing this properly. As in, the way we calculate it now, when the measure comes into effect on April 1, the Jamaicans and how we collect these taxes, it's not going to get the immediate full effect of that $1.8 million threshold at that period, correct?
You will get it over the fiscal year.
But not the full, you're still going to have a half part where you're getting 1.7 versus 1.8, so it will not be the full effect of 1.8.
You'll get the full effect each fiscal year.
And then maybe I'm not explaining this properly.
April 1 to March 31st of the following year.
Of the following year. I think that is where the misunderstanding lies. But clearly I'm not explaining this properly. I'm not from PwC, so I'll have to go and speak to someone from PwC to have this properly explained. But as they put it, they believe that it should be changed in terms of the date of the income tax threshold to be put in place, that it falls more in line with the normal tax processes that business have to calculate their tax compliance.
Okay, so if by that they mean it should be at the beginning of the calendar year,
yes,
then that's not possible because we are putting forward a budget for a fiscal year.
But in a sense, though, Minister, I think what they're indicating, it would be better on businesses and their accounting procedures to start it at the calendar year as opposed to the start of the budget year, as with what the government is doing now.
Okay, as far, that may be so, but as far as I know, in terms of how the government's budget process works and how we account for things,
it's not feasible.
Fiscal year basis, and right now I can't see how we change that because we really have to measure the budget.
Fair enough. Fair enough, Minister. And on the matter of wages, I know this has been a sticking point. We will have the fiscal commissioner on later, but you have suggested that there's no intention to go back to a wage cap. You pointed out to the inefficiencies and the result of what that has done to the public sector in terms of making it uncompetitive. But surely you understand the concern about how much of that wage bill comes from our revenue. I think at this point it's 50% of tax revenue and about 40% of overall revenue. Do you feel that there must be at some point in the future a return to some cap or some pegging of that wage bill?
What we really need to see is greater productivity from the public sector. We have been having gains over the years, and I do not deny that. But we want to see greater gains. And I was happy recently. I was listening to the station, and I heard one of the union leaders talk about pay for performance,
yes,
productivity, and that's what the next phase will be. Let's focus on how we can really get those productivity gains from the public sector, because government provides a lot of service to the economy as well, regulatory oversight, all kinds of things that they could take away from business or add to businesses. So we've spent the last several years putting in a lot of ICT into government, into a lot of different ministries, streamlining the platform for the wages, for payroll, for pension administration, and so forth. And while all of that is not felt in its totality just yet by Jamaicans, that's where we want to go next. We want to accelerate. We want people to feel the efficiency gains that the government has made. I mean, the other day I was pleased to note, I heard from the Commissioner of Taxes that 80% of the taxes collected are paid online. Right. Even as we see the tax offices still chock up with people, 80% of revenues are collected online. So let's deal with the next 20% and see how we can, facilitate and see how we can get better at doing this. And there are lots of areas within government that we can look to see how we can gain efficiencies. And then what that does for persons in the public sector, your job will be more enjoyable because you're not dealing with paperwork every day. You're dealing with systems that can help you to do analysis rather than sitting there trying to fill out a form that has 100 boxes on it and you have to put it in 3 different copies and all of that. We want to move away from that so that the throughput of government or the output of government is significantly more and it happens faster for our citizens.
Are you suggesting, Minister, that you would support performance-based pay for those within the public service?
Sure, and it's something that we plan to sit down with the unions to see how that could be implemented.
And before we wrap up, Minister, we're almost out of time. The $33 billion set aside for the wage negotiations coming up, is that set in stone? I know I don't want to put you in a position where you're negotiating outside of the arena of an actual negotiation with the public sector, but...
Well, we have to make assumptions for everything in the budget. We make assumptions for revenue growth. We make assumptions for wage growth. We make assumptions for interest payment. We make assumptions for all the different items. And we're bound to, because we're putting forward future numbers. We're giving the country a sense of what the numbers look like for the upcoming fiscal year. And within the confines of the revenue projection, we are saying for these different components, here are the best projections that we can come up with that we feel are sustainable and can be met within that. for all the different unions with which we are going to speak. We will communicate as best as we can the strictures in which we're operating, and, we talk across the table to see where we can meet on all of this.
But are you concerned, Minister, that this wage negotiation is coming up in a very contentious period of time? It is almost unavoidably going to become a very political hot issue.
Okay, well, it doesn't have to be. I certainly haven't made a politics out of it at all. We're talking about people's earnings. We're talking about something very personal, very private to them. We will manage this process in the most respectful way possible. I would never want this to be a political situation. I know it's happening in an election year, but we presented a budget to the people of Jamaica that does not have politics in it, a budget with which we feel, we believe, we know it's a conservative budget. We do not want to run a deficit that will not do us as a government or the people of Jamaica any good. And I believe that when I showed the chart yesterday as to the years of deficit spending and the impact on the debt to GDP ratio, and to know that it has hampered us so much over the decades, then to be here to try to what should I say, to try to make this political, that's not in my DNA.
Have to leave it there, Minister. Thank you as always.
But before I let you go, Minister, just to say, it should have been said at the top of the hour, congratulations on delivering your first budget presentation.
Thank you so much.
And all the best.
I look forward to doing many more.
Congratulations again, Minister, and all the best.
Thank you. Yes.
That was where I have to leave it, listeners. The headlines are next.
Cover Story was brought to you by Hyundai. Modern, premium, affordable vehicles.
The time brought to you by Guardian Life. Live secure, live easy is...
a minute after 6.
Nationwide headlines at 6.
Good evening with the headlines at 6. I'm Shalois Michael. The government plans to spend nearly $500 billion for public sector compensation in the upcoming financial year. Finance Minister Favour Williams says the sum also facilitates a critical expansion of the public sector.
Compensation for government employees is in the budget at $495.8 billion, and it includes new rates of pay for medical consultants, dental surgeons, parish court judges and probation aftercare officers, back pay for medical consultants and parish court judges, an allocation to support the employment of agricultural wardens, $1 billion to support continuation of the Jamaica National Service Corps, and a compensation contingency provision of $33 billion to meet the cost of public sector wage settlement, including a provision of $3 billion to support the filling of vacant technical positions in regional health authorities.
Meanwhile, the minister sought to assure Jamaicans that the budget will be sustainably funded despite the election year pressures.
I know that we all know that this is an election year, but I do know as well that Jamaicans have grown to know that as a government, we are committed to remain disciplined. We would not throw away the hard-won gains of the people of Jamaica, Madam Speaker, not even to win an election. So how will the budget for fiscal year 2025-26 be funded? The central government budget will be funded with 949.5 billion of tax revenues, 139.8 billion of non-tax revenues, 812 million of bauxite levy, and 5.96 billion of grants.
Favour Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service. The Jamaica Employers Federation, JEF, has hailed the gradual increase to the income tax threshold as a much-needed break for middle-income earners. Wayne Chen is the president of the JEF.
I think it's a very good move. Jamaica has long leaned on the PAYE contributors to take really a big part of the tax burden. It has become, over the years, a tax on formal employment and has had the unintended consequence of allowing a lot of people to stay in informality. Moving the income tax threshold from 1.7 million to 2 million over 3 years signals that the working Jamaican who is earning 2 million can now get that relief.
The first phase of the threshold will be increased to $1.8 million effective April 1 this year. It will then be further adjusted to $1.9 million on April 1, 2026, and a final adjustment to $2 million on April 1, 2027. Mr. Chen says the move will motivate more Jamaicans to seek formal employment.
And that is squarely into what I'll call the working middle class. And it's a good move in terms of, again, formalizing the contract of employment and making people feel comfortable to go and work in the formal sector.
Wayne Chen, president of the JEF. Political and social commentator Dr. Nadine Spence says the initiatives announced by Finance Minister Favour Williams in her budget presentation signaled that she identified with the plights of ordinary Jamaicans and intended to fix them.
Hearing her talk about emphasis on water as a rural woman, that's important to us. And hearing her connect to that story, because a lot of people in Kingston don't recognize that so many people in Jamaica struggle over water issues. And when you hear a recognition for women and that talk about how you carry water, I never used to carry water because I had a tank in my yard and my tank wasn't leaking. But there were a lot of people who had to carry water on their head, and a government that is emphasizing changing the water dynamics in a very tangible way. Not just talking about it in a very esoteric kind of theoretical way, but talking about putting money behind ensuring that people get water. I think people are going to be excited by that.
Dr. Spence also signaled out Minister Williams' announced changes to the Student Loan Bureau SLB. This include overhauling the SLB to provide housing, meals, and a laptop to potential borrowers. Dr. Spence says some of her students were heartened by the announcement.
One student said, Miss, I think I'm going to go away and cry now because I have struggled so much with trying to figure out school fees, because I manage Mary C. Cole Hall, and Mary C. Cole Hall, which is one of the traditional halls, fees just went to 300,000 for the year, and there are a lot of students who can't afford that. We had to implement a program where students could rent a laptop, who couldn't afford to, would rent a laptop, borrow a laptop from the library. So there are a lot of students who I have forms on my desk now where students are applying for meal grants and bursaries from the UWI to help them to survive on a daily basis. So I think young people heard that yesterday and they felt seen and felt heard.
Dr. Nadine Spence, political and social commentator, and the president of the Small Business Association of Jamaica, SBAJ, Garnet Reid, says while Minister Williams delivered a good presentation, more financial assistance could have been provided for the small business sector.
The minister, I think, delivered a good presentation. We was a little disappointed that she didn't go further for more help and assistance to the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. But one of the things I must commend her on is that $2 billion will be allocated to the small business sector. Good move. We think it could be more, but we have to work with what we get. She mentioned about $10 billion will be allocated to the National Water Commission. Good move to our small business operator that in the juice business who use a lot of water, good move for them. She mentioned about the junior market, which is a good move, long in waiting, but better late than never.
Mr. Reid says other measures can be taken to provide help for small businesses that were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
There's other things that I would love her to speak on. Still not too late because she will be closing her budget presentation and she including grant for small business operator. You know that during Corona, there is a lot of small business companies have been closed, hundreds of them. To date, some of them still not yet open. And a grant perhaps could help to put them back on their foot.
Garnet Reid, president of the SBAJ. Those were the headlines at 6. I'm Shalois Michael. Sports is next.
Cleasing Industrial Supplies Limited are authorized distributors of international brands ABB, Omron, STC, Festo, and Thomas & Betts. They supply programmable logic controllers, photoelectric and proximity sensors, contactors and soft starters, power supplies, variable frequency drives, and much more. Visit them at 24 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston, or shop 32 Overton Plaza, 46 Union Street, Montego Bay, or visit their website cleasling.net. Cleasing Industrial Supplies for all your industrial automation and control solutions.
Charles O'Connor Consulting Network, COCN, is a financial reporting firm that delivers accounting and compliance services on time. Call us today at 876-908-0486-7. Email us at clientservices@cocnjamaica.com or visit our website at www.cocnjamaica.com. COCN, driven by international accounting standards, modern technology, and integrity.
Win with love. Use your JMMB Money Transfer Prepaid Visa Card from October 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025 for a chance to win your share of a $2.1 million grand prize, plus a $100,000 university cash grant and cash back from paying tolls and shopping with your card. Receive money 24/7 in minutes with Visa Direct via MoneyGram, Zoom, Remitly, or directly through RIA and Zoom. Visit jm.jmmb.com/money-transfer for full details on how to enter and win with love. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act. Conditions apply.
Good evening with your sports report. I am Alric Swaby. We bowl things off with some cricket as Jamaica Scorpions reached 332 for 7 at Stumps on day 1 of the West Indies Regional 4-Day Championships against the West Indies Academy at Coolidge Cricket Ground. Captain John Campbell made a 101, Javel Glenn 68, Odin Smith 51, and Jermaine Blackwood 31. Brad Barnes 44 and Geoffrey Royal 4 are the not-out batsmen. Jediah Blades and Akeem August has so far taken 2 wickets each. Over at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, the Leeward Islands Hurricanes reached 367 for 5 against the combined campuses and colleges. Joel Andrew made 122, while Justin Greaves is unbeaten on 104. Shamar Holder has so far taken 2 wickets. Windward Islands Volcanoes in their rain-affected match reached 77 for 2 against the Guyana RP Eagles at Providence Stadium. Jeremy Solazano 43 and Captain Alec Athanas 9 are the not-out batsmen. And Trinidad and Tobago reached 181 for 4 in their match against Barbados Pride at Kensington Oval. Camille Puran made 60 and Amir Django is unbeaten on 37. Earlier, Barbados were bowled out for 86. Kamara Rhodes top scored with 21. Anderson Phillips took 4 for 36. Joshua James picked up 3 and Jaden Seals 2. Captain of the West Indies senior men's T20 team, Rovman Powell, does not agree with sentiments that Test cricket is dead. Powell has played 51 one-day internationals for the West Indies, scoring 979 runs. He has also played 84 T20 internationals, making 1,544 runs and 383 runs from 13 tests. Powell, who made his ODI debut against Sri Lanka on November 6, 2016, says if he had to drop one of the game's format to make the cricketing calendar manageable, he would have to do away with the 50-over game.
If I should drop one, I would drop 50 over cricket. I think Test cricket is the pinnacle of cricket, and T20 cricket is a format that is revolutionizing cricket. You know, it has become one of the formats that fans, young and old, love dearly. But if you are a true cricket lover, then Test cricket. So I would take out the middle guy, which is 50 over cricket.
Powell says he would change one rule in T20 cricket.
One thing I don't like about T20 cricket is the impact rule. I'm not really a big fan of the impact rule. I don't think 12 persons should be taking part in a game. You know, I think it should be 11 versus 11 and not necessarily how they use the impact rule. One thing I like about T20 cricket is how fast-paced it is and how quick the game can change. You know, in the blink of an eye, a T20 game is won or lost.
Rovman Powell. Now on to football, as Argentine football wizard Lionel Messi will fly into Kingston tonight with the rest of his Inter Miami team for the crucial CONCACAF Champions Cup clash with Cavalier at the National Stadium on Thursday. Inter Miami coach Javier Mascherano told a press conference in Florida on Wednesday ahead of the team's departure that Messi will travel with the team.
Messi will travel with us tonight with the team, and we will see tomorrow if he will start the game or not. That will be a decision that we have to take, but that decision we are going to take tomorrow, no, not today.
There had been speculation over whether the 8-time Ballon d'Or winner would make it, given that he has not played for the club in its last 3 games, including the 2-0 win over Cavalier in the first leg. They need only a draw to make it to the quarterfinals and can even afford a 1-0 defeat. Meanwhile, technical director of Cavalier, Rudolph Speed, says going up against some of the world's best players will put Jamaica and the Caribbean football on show.
What we need is for people to recognize Jamaica football, the Caribbean football, that we're improving, and open the door for some of our players too. For other clubs, to think that our players could be important for them to acquire.
Rudolph Speed. The Brazil legend Ronaldo has pulled out of the race to be president of the country's football association after finding closed doors to his candidacy. The 48-year-old, who was capped 98 times, was planning to challenge Confederation of Brazilian Football President Enaldo Rodrigues. Rodrigues' term runs until March 2026, and the presidential elections must take place in the next 12 months. Ronaldo had pledged to recover the prestige of the national team when he announced his original intention to stand. Brazil recorded 5-time winners of the World Cup, last won the competition in 2002 and reached the semifinals in 2014. However, the former Barcelona, Inter Milan and Real Madrid striker has decided to withdraw because most of Brazil's regional federations support the incumbent president. Now to squash, as 10 coaches from 4 Caribbean islands successfully completed a 3-day World Squash Federation Level 1 coaching course, which was sponsored by the Federation of Pan American Squash. They received their certification at the Ligani Club in Kingston after doing the theory and practical exams, as well as a one-on-one interview with Colin White, the course instructor. The coaches hailed from the Bahamas, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Cayman Islands, while 7 were from host country Jamaica. The objective of the course was to increase the number of certified coaches in the region to fill the void for their services. Stephen Deere, one of Jamaican coaches, endorsed the course. He felt that he was now in a better position to grow the sport in the western end of the island.
Having done this training, I feel that we should be able to take squash in Montego Bay to another level in terms of the structure, in terms of the tutelage. This course has definitely given us tools that we can use to structure the way that the ball is played. It actually also has helped us tremendously from a safety standpoint too, which is a big thing in squash because you're in a close quarter with your opponent. So it's really important that everybody understands the safety aspect. But, just the tools that we've been given to help to give a name and a label to something we're trying to get the team to follow. That's what this coaching course has done for us. For me, personally, it inspired me to actually go on and do level 2.
Stephen Deere. The opposition spokesman on sports, Wavell Hines, is calling for clarity and transparency regarding the certification status of the resurfaced track at the National Stadium. Hines says, with the Issa Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Championships and the Grand Slam Track Series fast approaching, concerns have been raised about whether the track will regain its previous World Athletics Class 1 certification or receive a downgraded Class 2 status.
I am calling on Independence Park Limited and the Ministry of Sports to provide full transparency on this matter. Has the contractor produced the necessary World Athletics certification? If not, why? And when will certification be finalized? We also need answers on the procurement process and payments made. Has due diligence been followed to ensure the track meets the highest international standards? And who is ultimately paying for this project?
Wavell Hines. Of note, a Class 2 certified track can still host high-level competitions. However, it does not meet the rigid criteria required for World Championships or Olympic qualification events. The Issa Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Championships and the Grand Slam Track Series in April were part of the reason for the resurfacing of the stadium track. On to swimming, as Noah Parker was the high points winner in the 11 to 12 boys category at the recent Walter Rogers Age Group National Swimming Championships at the stadium pool. The Tornadoes swimmer amassed 128 points. Parker won the 200 meters IM and the 100 meters freestyle and finished second in the 50 meters breaststroke on his way to the high points trophy for his age group. He now turns his attention to the Character Championships in Trinidad and Tobago, where he'll contest 10 events later this month.
My coaches and I are quite pleased with my performance thus far in the meet. I've been able to drop time in numerous events, such as the 50-meter butterfly, 200 IM, and the 200-meter freestyle. In preparation for this meet, I stay consistent with my training in and out of the water while still getting adequate amount of sleep, daily hydration, and a balanced diet. Yes, we can expect more come the CRIFTA Games. My coaches and I believe that I will be able to medal in numerous events, and I believe that they will properly train me for that goal to be achieved.
Noah Parker. And final in boxing, Chris Eubanks Jr. has been fined £100,000 for slapping Conor Benn with an egg during a chaotic news conference last month. As the pair prepare for their obligatory face-off, Eubank produced an egg from his pocket and hit his British rival across the cheek with his left hand. Benn, with his father Nigel next to him, lost control and both boxers were held back by security guards. In a statement, the British Boxing Board of Control said Eubank was in breach of Regulation 25 in relation to misconduct. The incident happened in Manchester on February 25 as the pair promoted their fight at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium next month. I'm Alex Ribby, and that's your sports.
For all your scales and food processing equipment, call Advanced Scales and Equipment Limited at 876-968-9612-5. The time by Advanced Scales and Equipment Limited is
6:22.
Visit Marshall's Pharmacy, Greater Portmore for all your prescription needs, gifts, personal care, household and stationery items. The temperature by Marshall's Pharmacy, Greater Portmore is
28 degrees Celsius in City Kingston and 28 in Montego Bay.
Experience the joy of buying a brand new Hyundai without breaking the bank. Yes, buying a brand new car should never leave you broke. From stylish designs and safety features to comfortable driving and reliability, Hyundai is the choice. Hyundai vehicles come standard with 2 years free service and 5 years warranty and roadside assistance for your peace of mind. Drive 2 years without service cost and 5 years without fear of being stranded. Hyundai. Conditions apply.
Want to reduce your high electricity bills? Then Peak Energy has the solution for you. From grid tie to hybrid solar inverters with full lithium-ion battery pack. Installation and maintenance packages available. Visit us at Shop 1, 3 Mosquito Valley Road, Red Hill, St. Andrew. Call 876-279-8820 or 944-0668. Or email us at peakenergysolutionsja@gmail.com. Peak Energy for everything solar.
I pursue opportunities.
I prepare for opportunities.
I plan for opportunities.
With Sagicor e-Invest, you can prepare, plan for and pursue IPO opportunities. Browse IPOs, review IPO details and prospectuses. Select and apply for a featured IPO.
I-P-O.
With Sagicor e-Invest. Think wealth. Visit sagicor.com.
Public Opinion is brought to you by Cleasing Industrial Supplies Limited, Industrial Automation and Control Solutions.
Good evening, and welcome to Public Opinion. I'm Roby Ann Williams. A special good evening to our YouTubers. We invite you to weigh in live in the comments section on today's Public Opinion. It's the only thing that we've been talking about as of yesterday. Yeah? The budget presentation. The country's first female Prime Minister of Finance. Here they. Yes, the country's first female Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Favour Williams, presented her maiden speech, her budget debate for the 2025-26 fiscal year in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. Yeah? Over 20 initiatives she announced to increase economic growth in the country. Among them is a phased increase of the income tax threshold. Income tax will be abolished for Jamaicans earning up to $2 million over the next 3 years. The finance minister also announced the creation of a micro market for the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Additionally, the government's promise to lower the GCT on electricity from 15% to 7%, that will take effect on May 1. According to the minister, these are good news. Yeah? She also indicated a plan to spend $1 billion to assist 20,000 first-time prepaid customers of the JPS. So in Public Opinion this evening, with all the news we've heard from yesterday to today, it's all we've been talking about. What was your highlight from Favour Williams' budget presentation? That's the Public Opinion question today, and we truly want to hear from you, the people, or people. All right, I'll start with the comments on X, where Graham Jervis is saying that the drop in GCT on electricity, it affects all. Good move. Obviously, the increase in the threshold is also welcomed. For Denise McKenzie, the increase in the income tax threshold is also her highlight. Sam Mitchell saying the GCT cut from 15% to 7% on electricity. For President, he's saying no new tax, no wage freeze. Diva Lady also saying no new taxes. CJ saying the new grants for SLB, lengthening of the repayment period, yes, from 7 to now 10 years, and the new platform to check the balance. Those were the highlights for CJ. Moving to our Instagram platform, where King Kells is saying that Favour was cool, calm, and collected and meant business. She wears her pearls, but she will manage the budget with an iron fist. I was very proud of her, and I know Nigel must be watching anywhere in the world imde. Yeah? For Chris Duncan, he's saying that betting on the expansion of the tourism industry to collect more revenue and the JPS prepaid meter, which will have a greater collection of revenue, which is a precursor to a new energy company. Just watch. All right, let's see. That we will have to do. Watch and see. Priscilla is saying, I love the part about not using your rent money to go party. Yeah. You have to be disciplined at all times. If the government wasn't, then we would have mash up, especially from COVID. Jet Slate says all of it was the highlight, yeah, from start to finish. Okay. One Leprodon is saying it was a circus budget for clowns. Only thing come from the awful presentation was the couple of ideas they stole from the PNP. Welcome. We welcome the varying views. We love that. It's the court of public opinion. What was your highlight from Favour Williams' budget presentation? For Jamstar, he is saying that it was a budget to drive consumption and local production on the part of the government. It was a good presentation. Other variables will need to come in line to foster growth. Gloria Watson saying she bust out, but was cool and classy. Only the bad mind will say otherwise. All right, for Boss Lady, she's saying the minister maiden budget presentation was great. She was on fire from start to finish. Hashtag good news, Boss Lady. Yeah. Let me see if I can get some unorthodoxes saying, well, her maiden budget presentation was of impeccable substance. Apart from the goodies, no new taxes. She's a force to be reckoned with. Yeah. For real, Dread, Favel's budget was a disaster. The budget was a disaster. It had nothing in it for the poor. All right. Switching gears now to our Facebook platform. Coming over YouTube quickly. What was the highlight for you from Favel Williams' budget presentation? Oh my God, we have a whole lot of comments on Facebook, but I'll only be able to go through a few, so bear with me. Michelle Bernard is saying, you can't use your rent money to go partying. We should all let that sink in. We all should act mature and responsible. Yeah? According to Prince Wellington, Favel Williams' budget presentation was deddy and puny. Vitamins might be lacking. Yeah? Carlene says, my highlight was we are not the government that run with it. We are government of performance. And Cheryl also saying that you can't use your rent money and go party. Highlight for her. For Carlington Bartley, he's saying that Favel Williams delivered a budget with a mother's touch. The $10 billion to NWC as a person who usually carry water on my head? Highlight. Yeah. Isaac Morrison says, very balanced budget, no run with it. I do hope those who are throwing up light will take the opportunity to get their house wired, and the holders of student loans and those to come must be smiling. That throw up light something there. For true. Like how much initiatives do we go get for go legal? Yeah? How much initiatives are you going to are going to be thrown at you for you to go legal? Just a thought. Arlene Kelly saying no new taxes. Mark Anthony saying SLB. Winston says everything. For Maureen Bryan, she's saying no new taxes. Marcia Curry says nothing new. All there is was what was there already. They just spoke of what Mark had proposed that they say wouldn't work. Shake my head, them for stop copy now, man. Look how long them left school. Sean says, me can't afford rent, much less party. I got that loud and clear. Yeah? Lesma says she was very responsible and cautious of the government's finances, focusing on balancing public spending and revenue. Over on our YouTube platform, let me come before you come at me. George Alwood is saying can't use rent money and go party. For Paul Campbell, he's saying very good budget. Let me look at it. For Kevin, he's saying that the budget was empty, nothing catchy in it, only what was expected. No new taxes, time for them to go. Yeah? For Roger Shippey, he's saying simple, give me substance over style any day. All right. For Bell Ringer, he's saying that, or she's saying that SLB relief package, 10 billion for water while balancing the budget are my major winners. All right, let me see if I can get in Panch. Panch So Blessed is saying, great budget speech. My highlights, carrying water on my head. That's how I grew up in the country. I can imagine. Yeah. Michael Wright says, only thing I don't like, them talk like it's PNP, son of the dead. Okay, I don't understand that one, Michael. Let me see. Dwayne Woody says that man is a fool. JLP woman in politics is doing a good job. Not to mention the finance minister, Minister Williams. She's excellent. Nathan is saying, how come the thief from the PNP when the PNP said them not putting out anything for the JLP to thief? All right. Betsy Powell says no new tax. David Nabar is the minister. Is it that you're questioning if she did a very good job, or you're saying that the minister did a very good job? A lot of comments coming in. I suspect we will have comments coming in left, right, and center because the budget presentation continues. Tomorrow, we have the opposition on finance, Julian Robinson, who will be making his presentation. Then, we have Mark Golding, the Prime Minister, next week. Closing out the budget presentation, we have the Finance Minister again. Yeah, so we look forward to the other presentations. Let's see what will happen. It's an election year too, so let's see. That's all the time we have for Public Opinion. The Business Report is up next.
Public Opinion was brought to you by Cleasing Industrial Supplies Limited, Industrial Automation and Control Solutions.
Drive the most exciting new vehicles in Jamaica. Schedule your 2024 Ford Ranger pickup or Ford Everest 7-seater SUV test drive now. Call or visit KIG today.
The time by KIG is
6:34. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Nationwide's Business Report. I'm Roby-Ann Williams. Motorists should see a decrease at the pumps in the price of gasoline effective Thursday, March 13. That's tomorrow. And that's according to the latest ex-refinery costs from Petrojam. Both grades of gasoline, 87 octane and 90 octane, will go down by 79 cents per litre. Automotive diesel fuel will see a decrease of $3.06 per litre. So too will ultra-low sulfur diesel go down by $3.06 per litre. As it relates to kerosene, it will go down by $2.73 per litre. Propane liquid petroleum and butane liquid petroleum will both go down $3.06 per litre. Further afield, U.S. President Donald Trump has pledged to impose more tariffs after his latest move to introduce import taxes on steel and aluminum entering the U.S., prompted retaliation from the European Union and Canada. Trump said, of course, he would respond to the countermeasures, repeating his warning to reveal reciprocal tariffs next month on countries around the world. Whatever they charge us with, we're charging them. That's what he said. And finally, in the currency markets at the close of trading today, it cost 157 Jamaican dollars and 70 cents to buy $1 US, 205 Jamaican dollars and 53 cents to buy $1 British pound, and 109 Jamaican dollars and 68 cents to buy the Canadian dollar. That's the Business Report. I'm Roby-Ann Williams. Good evening.
Enough power tool, big to small. Chakama figure dig the wall.
Our Total Tools.
Beat waka figure trim the lawn. We have everything a job demand.
Total Tools.
We rent them, sell them and fix them. Also give Total Tools a call. When I say home improvement, landscape construction, a Total Tools are your option. Home improvement, landscape construction, Total Tools are your option.
Total Tools located at 102 Main Street, Ocho Rios, 34 Slipe Road, Kingston.
And lot C6 Jacksaw, Sentence Bay. Call us today.
My Mega Mart, best value by far.
With so much to do in one location, make Mega Mart your one-stop shop. Pick up your groceries and houseware needs, grab a bite and pay some bills, fill your prescriptions and see the beauty products in our pharmacy. All in one amazing location. My Mega Mart, the best value by far.
It's tax season. Time to reach for your checkbook or dole out the cash. Or maybe not. Discover an easier way to pay your taxes. Use your Sagicor Bank Business Credit Card. You'll get a 1-month payment holiday, up to 55 days interest-free, and unlimited rewards points on every dollar you spend. Discover how easy and convenient it is to pay your taxes with your Sagicor Bank Business Credit Card. Don't have a Sagicor Bank Business Credit Card? Visit Sagicor.com to apply for yours today. Conditions apply.
For generations, Jamaican families have trusted Imperial Optical to keep their vision clear and their style sharp. From their first eye exam to the latest in fashion frames, we've been there for every milestone, every moment, and every memory. Whether it's your child's first day at school or your grandparents' golden years, our care spans every age, every stage. Visit Imperial Optical today. Generations of care, generations of trust.
If it's in the public's interest, it's the nation's business during Nationwide at 5. The nation's business.
Hi there. Here's some good news for these trying times. Quote, "By God's word, I can see where I'm going. They throw a beam of light on my dark path." Unquote. Psalm 119, verse 105. Listen for God's Word weekdays at 5:45 a.m. and 12:55 p.m. through
Oasis. Stop by for a refreshing drink and share a God perspective for the day.
Oasis. Weekdays 5:45 a.m. and 12:55 p.m. right here on Nationwide, a revolution in media.
The rebroadcast of the Oasis can be heard weekdays at 5:45 a.m.
Good evening, listeners and viewers. Welcome back to Nationwide. It's now time for the nation's business, and I am Siobhan Campbell.
And my name is Sanjay Lewis. The Independent Fiscal Commission has released its first economic and fiscal assessment report. The commission is the body intended to monitor the government's adherence to fiscal rules. It has replaced the Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC, which served at the outset of Jamaica's economic reform program in 2012.
Former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, that's Courtney Williams, was sworn in on March 3, 2023 as Jamaica's first fiscal commissioner. Mr. Williams says the commission's inaugural report was done based on reviewing the estimates of expenditure that was tabled on February 13, with emphasis on the fiscal policy paper. Dana Davey has more in this report.
Courtney Williams says the country's fiscal position and policy is sustainable. According to him, the country's macroeconomic and fiscal projections are reasonable and achievable. However, the fiscal commissioner believes there are significant downside risks to the growth projections given current geopolitical uncertainties. He also says the heavy reliance on and the potential for fallout in tax revenue inflows during the last 2 weeks of March raised the risk for fiscal deviation with minimal opportunity for in-year adjustments. Mr. Williams says the government has shown a willingness and capacity to make fiscal adjustments when faced with shocks in order to meet fiscal targets. To this end, he says the government has implemented several measures to mitigate the impact of natural disasters through various disaster risk financing instruments and the strengthening of the public investment management system to bolster resilience. The fiscal commissioner is also warning that the increased wages and salaries for public sector workers present a source of fiscal risk if not anchored to growth in the economy. Despite this, Mr. Williams says there are some weaknesses in the country's budgetary process that demonstrate non-compliance with the fiscal responsibility framework. These include the absence of the presentation of the fiscal balance for the specified public sector instead of a consolidated figure for said sector, the absence of established compensation negotiation cycles that align with the budgetary cycle as required under the Financial Administration Act FAA Part 748H. The Fiscal Commissioner is recommending that the government give consideration to addressing the weaknesses identified in the budgetary process to comply with the fiscal responsibility framework by presenting a fiscal profile for the specified public sector with focus on inter alia revenue, expenditure, fiscal balance, primary balance, and public debt, accelerating the implementation of the public sector transformation to improve the efficiency of provision of public goods and services, and strengthening fiscal resilience by addressing the risk associated with potential revenue fallout in the last fiscal quarter by shifting the deadline for filing annual income tax returns from March to a month in the first quarter, April to June, of the fiscal year. Dana Davy for Nationwide at 5.
And the Fiscal Commissioner, Mr. Williams, joins us now. Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, Siobhan.
Good evening, rather.
And who's with you, Sanjay?
Yes, Sanjay Lewis.
Yes.
Yes, good evening, Sanjay. Good evening to all your listeners and the viewers online.
Thank you.
Before we get into the other matters, I want to start with wages, Mr. Williams, because that one seems to be the hot topic among not only you as a fiscal monitor, but other areas of concern, considering we're going into another wage negotiation cycle. This matter of putting some constraint on the wages that the compensation that is spent on the public sector. Is there a method to achieve this without the capping of wage to GDP?
Well, the wage to GDP is just one anchor that can be considered. For example, the government could look at other matters as, for example, if it wants to tie wages to revenue, as another example. But what I'm looking at as a comprehensive approach is to tie the wages to GDP, which invariably would also be tying it to productivity. Because if the country is more productive, you'll be seeing that reflected in higher GDP. And hence, linking the wages to the GDP, I think it's something worth considering. From the perspective that the GDP, this is really telling you how much the country earns. And from what the country earns, you're looking at how much should it allocate to paying public sector workers. We think some kind of anchor for the wages will will contribute significantly in terms of the overall fiscal profile. How much money is allocated to wages versus how much money will be left for growth-enhancing activities.
But you've heard the minister saying that this was ineffective in the past, and the fallout in the public sector as a result of that attempt to cap it, what that resulted in terms of inefficiencies, underpayment of the public sector. I want you to give me an assessment of that statement by the minister when we come back from the break.
This time signal is sponsored by Janet Global Accreditation, an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. The time is now
6:46. So welcome back, listeners and viewers. As I said, we're talking with the Fiscal Commissioner, that's Courtney Williams, and currently we're talking about wages and the need to cap that as a percentage of GDP or some other measure to keep it in line with the country's productivity and growth. So as I said, Mr. Williams, this matter of capping wages to GDP, the minister gave an outline as part of her budget presentation saying that when we did have the target, we only met it once, in one quarter specifically. It caused quite a bit of inefficiencies in the public sector and resulted in wage freezes, underperformance, and there was a need to move away from it. How do we address that while balancing the need to have some kind of limit placed on how much of our revenues goes towards paying for wages?
Well, Siobhan, I don't know if there was a need to move away from it, but let us go back in time. So in 2010, when the Financial Administration and Audit Act was amended to include a rule, a ceiling on the wages at 9% of GDP. So that was set in 2010 for it to be achieved in 2016. So when you look at the wage to GDP between 2010 and 2016, the fact that it was above 9% does not mean it was not met, because the target was for 2016. But the trajectory, and we present a table in our report, a figure 7 in the report that shows that there was a continuous decline in the wage to GDP ratio when the rule was implemented in 2010. There was a decline continuing all the way down to 2018-19. So there was a trend decline even though the target was not met in 2016, March 2016 when it was set. But the trajectory was for a decline, and then that has been reversed. So I would not say it was not, the target was off, it was not successful, because it was utilized successfully by the government in terms of the negotiation with the union to have some amount of restraint. And restraint doesn't mean freeze. Restraint may be limiting the level of increase. So I see some good effect of it at the time when it was utilized. But the target was not for each of those years from 2010. It was for 2016 for the target to be met in 2016.
If I can flip it though, Mr. Williams, and Siobhan hinted at it earlier, the challenge that the government had though was individuals were not motivated. We saw low productivity because in essence, the government was somewhat boxed in as to what they could offer to those within the public sector. So isn't there the political reality that exists, and also the government being fearful that if they are boxed in where there's a cap, then we may see backlash from the public sector?
So Sanjay, I don't know where if you have those figures that showed low productivity in those years versus now. I actually don't have those figures. I won't make a specific comment on it in terms of the level of productivity. But the argument is, it's not as if government is just going to come and impose on the union. It's a partnership. What we would expect is that there to be a negotiation between the government and the respective trade unions and bargaining units, bearing that in mind that you're working with some kind of anchor. Because let me tell you one of the situations there. So they look at all the expenditures 2016 as a percent of GDP, wages, that's the only one that went up.
Yes.
You saw where capital expenditure went down. You saw where recurrent programs went down. So is that the kind of trajectory you would want? I mean, if you think about it a certain way, and just to give an example, if you were to say double teachers' pay, and this is not a suggestion or a proposal I'm putting, I'm just giving an example. If you were to do that, but when it rains, the entire classroom is wet, or the teachers don't have material and which to conduct their lectures and their lessons. What would be the value of just having elevated and rising wages, crowding out other expenditure, and growth enhancing expenditure? So that's one of the things to be mindful of. If it remains elevated, it means that other areas of expenditure, needed expenditure in the capital, talking about capital investment as well as recurrent programs, those that can actually enhance growth. And with that enhancement in growth, more revenue, and you can actually will be able to pay higher wages while still maintaining that trajectory and that ceiling and the wage bill.
Yeah. If I could shift a little bit, one of their key recommendations is to shift the annual income tax return deadline to the first quarter of the fiscal year. What benefits would this provide in terms of fiscal stability?
All right. So what we have is a situation, Sanjay, where a significant portion of the March is the month where the government gets most of its tax
collection. Yes.
Yes.
Right. I'm not sure what it is for the last year, but I recall tax revenue between 15 to 20% coming in March, which the bulk of it coming in from March 15 to March 31st. So a significant portion of the revenue coming in the last couple weeks of the fiscal year. Now, just imagine if you were to have a significant shortfall in revenue at that point in the last 2 weeks. There would be no time for you to adjust. They could end up missing your fiscal target because of underperformance in revenue in the last 2 weeks of the fiscal year. And just to give an analogy, if I were to say, I don't know if you are old enough to remember the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. In Jamaica, 4x400 meter men's relay team. And I think our third leg runner, Gregory Horton, within the exchange zone, he actually fell. We Jamaicans call it Kim Pupalikin. I think the youngsters now call it something like that. But Horton, he flipped over, and in doing so, he would have lost maybe a second or two. But because it happened early in the leg, he had time. He had time to catch up and was able to complete and hand over in third position. Now, if you think of the revenue like that, if the largest month for revenue is, say, April or May, and if you have a shortfall in that month, you have 9-10 months to make up or to make adjustments to the expenditure to meet your annual target. When it's in the last month and the last couple of weeks, you really don't have any time for any adjustment in case it is off. And that is a significant risk that you have there. So usually you get into March and the last 2 weeks of March, and everybody in the ministry and in TAJ, they are watching the tax revenue so much because so much depends on it. It may mean whether or not you meet a key fiscal target or not. If it's in the first quarter of the year, you would alleviate that kind of pressure and that kind of risk because you will have time to adjust in case you have any shortfall.
But Mr. Williams, wouldn't that require a significant realignment on the part of how businesses do their own tax collections, their tax assessments, etc.?
No, I don't think so. Shifting from 1 month, March to April, wouldn't require that much of an adjustment for them. In fact, it's something they may actually welcome. In the first instance, they would get 1 more month. But thereafter, things would normalize. So there would be a shock, yes, for the first month, in the sense that government would lose revenue in March of that year, and then they would make it up in whether it's April or May of the following year. So it's just a shock to this system, just a temporary shock from 1 month to the other. But thereafter, things would normalize, and it would shift the risk to the start of the year rather than the end of the year, where you really wouldn't have any room for adjustment if you were to be off track.
Then another thing, Mr. Williams, the matter of the compensation negotiation cycles. I remember this attempt was being made to shift how we did this. Whatever became of that?
I don't know what became of it, but what I do know is that the situation now is that new wage rates are due April 1. Negotiations have just about started, and there are some of the negotiations which haven't yet started. So you get to the start of the fiscal year, and there's uncertainty as to how those negotiations will end, what kind of settlement you will get. So yes, the government has a contingency provision. That contingency provision, they would have assumed a certain wage increase. What if you have a situation where the settlements end up higher than what the government plans for, which has happened in the past? So what I'm saying here is that seek to complete the negotiation in advance of when the budget is presented. So what I'm saying is, okay, in January, the government issues a compensation call. It would indicate to the different unions, these are our assumptions for economic growth and inflation and so on, and what is the target, fiscal target to set in, and you give the unions 2 months to respond with their claim. So the unions will respond by, say, the end of March. And then over the next 5 months, from April through to August, government will be negotiating with the various unions and bargaining units. so that by September, you would have had, assuming all goes well, and all will not necessarily go well. But if you can get some of the key unions to settle within that 5-month period, by September, you would know with much certainty what the wage bill for the following year will be. So you can properly budget without having to be worrying about what if those settlements turn out higher than the amount that you program for.
Except though, Mr. Williams, except though that's living in an ideal world, and we have the benefit of several examples where that's not really possible, considering the different unions and how they have to go back to their members and the different processes. Is that timeline really realistic, given how our unions operate?
No, unions have settled in less than 5 months before.
But we do have the outlying situations, as Sanjay said, where sometimes these wage negotiations can drag on.
Yes.
And sometimes the negotiations start late into the year. And yes, they will drag on depending on what is. However, one of the things to bear in mind, the history that you are looking at, the history of Jamaica, is a different pace we are in now. The macroeconomic stability that obtains now was not the situation, let's say, 15, 20 years ago. So the unions were so concerned as to whether or not if they sign early, inflation and depreciation may erode significant amounts that they would have settled for. No, that is not the environment we are in. We can pretty much be certain, with fair amount of certainty, that we'll get inflation in the target range of 4 to 6% that the BOJ works with. We are pretty much certain that given the situation, the strength of the reserve now, and the resolve of the Bank of Jamaica, we won't see the kind of depreciation that used to happen 15 or 20 years ago. So the macroeconomic stability actually gives the government, put the government in that position, as well as the unions, to say the likelihood of erosion of those wage settlements would be much less reduced. So we don't have to have the situation where those wage negotiations drag on as long as they used to in years gone by.
Stay with us, Mr. Williams. We're up on a break.
Jamaica's Spark program is investing $45 billion to improve roads, water, and telecom. Better infrastructure for a better future. The time by Spark is...
It's 7:01.
The NWC's bill-free promotion is here. Be one of 350 persons to get $20,000 water credit when you pay your bill in full every month until March 31, 2025. And there's more. Oh yes, you can win $300,000, $200,000, or $100,000 cash in the NWC's bill-free promotion if you register for e-bill and pay your bill in full every month until March 31. Conditions apply. Visit nwcjamaica.com for details. Authorized under Section 58(3) of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act, a part of the NWC's bucket full of goodies.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to the cover story, well, not the cover story, to the 7th and final hour of Nationwide News. We're actually in the nation's business, and we're talking to the country's fiscal commissioner, that is Courtney Williams, regarding those fiscal stability rules that the country must adhere to in order to ensure some certainty in our economic policies. And we were speaking on that matter of certainty. You were suggesting that now, Mr. Williams, we have that level of certainty in terms of inflation targeting, the understandings in terms of what revenues will be coming in, what is our debt trajectory, etc. And that should allow the government essentially to give up some flexibility on how they do wage negotiations. Is that what you're essentially saying?
That's a significant macroeconomic dividend that the government has that it can leverage. And the unions, I don't think any unions would be in a position to question that kind of stability. I mean, the numbers are there. I don't think anyone would doubt that, the stability that we enjoy now. It's a much different situation from what existed many years ago when you have those negotiations dragging on and on and on and on. Moreover, another point I should emphasize here, a lot of times when you had the negotiations dragging out and so protracted, sometimes these negotiations weren't so much about on the basic pay, but unions were jockeying to try to get increases on the allowances and so on and so forth. But with the compensation restructure that was done from 2022 to this year, significant, in fact, the majority of those allowances were actually subsumed or rolled into basic pay. So you wouldn't have that much discussions and negotiations around allowances anymore, which used to be a source of the protracted delays in those negotiations. So the situation is actually much better now, both in terms of the stability, macro stability, as well as the structure of compensation now to allow for you to have this kind of compensation negotiation structure, with the negotiations being completed within, as I said here, within 4 to 5 months. I'm not saying you'll necessarily get it right in the first year. You may still have some unions which won't come in time and settle in time. But I think the government should be able to get and leverage, as I said, the macro stability that obtained to actually get the unions to the table and have the discussion. And I think the unions would also see value in, and generally the public, in having the settlement and knowing what the increases are before you get to the start of the year.
And I can agree with that, considering, as you said, we're having this matter of now estimating what that potential increase in the expenditures for the next fiscal year will be at $33 billion. But before we wrap up with you, Mr. Williams, I have to go back to this matter of compensation and that wage to GDP target. Would the matter of performance-based pay be satisfactory enough a metric to fix this concern about the impact on tax revenues in terms of implementing a performance-based assessment pay structure?
That could help, and there was actually a performance-based structure in terms of the increment. So, but the increments were suspended during the implementation of compensation restructuring. So the increment should have been based on performance. So what the government is thinking of is revamping the previous performance management appraisal system with a new system where they will seek to better link payment of increment to performance. So there's that portion that would still be there. So outside of negotiated some with the unions, there would also be that performance link pay, which is kind of tantamount to like some kind of promotion. Or if you perform based on your assessment, then you get an increment or two, or whatever the new system going to be. So I don't think it's necessarily either or, but I see both can actually work in tandem.
Courtney Williams is the country's fiscal commissioner. Thank you as always for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Siobhan and Sanjay.
Yes. All the best, Mr. Williams.
Best.
Before you go, Mr. Williams, I understand there is a meeting with the media next week by the Fiscal Commission?
Yes, we'll be having a press conference on Monday.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
So that will be another opportunity to dig deeper into some of these issues.
All right. All the best. Well, we're going to take a break, listeners. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton. He's going to discuss that U.S.-Cuba visa restrictions and how it will affect those within the health sector. We take the break.
Outperform, outlast, with top performance, Jackama, reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electricians. Fancy select tools, 3 parts and 3 repairs. 3 parts, 3 repairs. 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-6111-4. Delta Supply, we service what we sell.
Digicel, live life your way, no free what? Digicel postpaid. With Digicel postpaid, it's all about you. Sign up or pay your bills to stay active for a chance to win a luxurious all-expense paid trip for two to Royalton, Antigua. With round-trip flights on us, every week you could win exciting prizes. Event tickets, gym memberships, spa packages, excursion adventures, restaurant vouchers, and more. When you opt in on the My Digicel app, life your way starts now with Digicel. Better connected.
Promotion ends March 31. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Attention motorists, it's time to switch to the T-Tag on Trans-Jam highways. The T-Tag system reduces the amount of cash handled at our toll plazas and makes it safer for our staff and motorists at the toll booths. The T-Tag makes it quicker, more cost-efficient, and safer for our customers. So switch to the T-Tag today and experience the convenience. T-Tag packages are discounted to only $1,500, including a $500 toll credit from now until March 31st.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to the third and final hour. We are now switching gears over to health, where Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says new rules imposed by the United States, which will effectively prevent Jamaica from hosting Cuban healthcare workers, could pose a significant challenge for the healthcare system in the country. He was speaking at last Thursday's meeting of the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament. The minister was responding to questions about the impact of the U.S. government's announcement about visa restrictions for public officials from countries benefiting from the Cuban labor export program.
And according to the U.S. State Department, the new policy will impose visa restrictions not only on Cuban officials, but also those of countries the U.S. government believes uses Cuba's labor export program. In a statement last week, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says it underscores Washington's commitment to countering forced labor practices globally. According to the State Department, Cuba has long been accused of profiting from the forced labor of its workers.
The statement says the regime's labor export programs, including the widely used medical missions, serve to enrich the Cuban government while depriving Cuban citizens of much-needed healthcare services at home. It says the latest move signals an effort to hold not only Cuban officials accountable, but also foreign government figures deemed complicit in the practices. Dr. Tufton says the government, through the Foreign Affairs Ministry, is attempting to come to a compromise through negotiations with Cuba and the United States. However, he says contingencies are being worked on through the Philippines, India, and Nigeria that may be expedited to respond to the worst-case scenario.
There were discussions before all of this. In fact, we have an MOU that we're finalizing, which will see some faculty and some specialists coming from Nigeria. We've had that before in our health system, so that those relationships are traditional relationships. We've had in the past Indian nationals coming. So while we acknowledge the problem, and we would prefer to avoid it being a crisis in that regard, because we do believe the relationship with Cuba has been strong and very beneficial, and we would like to preserve it, even if we have to make some adjustments. We're also putting in place contingencies that before now were not necessarily contingencies for this issue, but the need to expand capacity generally. And so we'll just have to fast track some of those to account for some of the gaps that exist.
And that's Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton. He now joins us. Good evening, Minister.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you as always. Can you elaborate, Minister, on the extent of this challenge and which areas of the healthcare sector would most likely be affected?
Right. So, as I said in the Parliament, the relationship with Cuba has been a long-standing one and a very strong one, very beneficial to us, to the Jamaican people, in the area of healthcare. When I looked at the spread, it really touches most areas, but primarily in the specialist areas for nursing. So, outside of the regular registered nurse, which we train a lot of, beyond that additional training, where you have the, operating theater nurse, the critical care nurse, and then there are a few doctors, and there are others in the areas such as ophthalmology, so eye care. The Cuban eye care program is a very strong one here. There are about 17 or so of those persons here, and they do a lot of work to do surgeries and so on each day from St. Joseph's and KPH. So, I mean, in terms of geographic spread, it's pretty much in all parishes. And in terms of overall numbers, it's approximately 400 or so. So it's a good contingent who are here now, and this has been the case for some time.
So, Minister, I want to key in on something that does concern me. According to the State Department, Cuba is using forced labor as part of this, and they suggest that this labor is being used to enrich the Cuban government at the expense of its citizens. In terms of the compensation structure for the medical missions that come to Jamaica, is it the government's of Jamaica's understanding that it's an exploitative system?
You know, we have never really interrogated that to beyond a certain extent. I mean, as I said, the relationship is long-standing, and the arrangements around recruitment, which we engage, we help to interview and to select persons, the treatment of the individuals, both to get here in terms of expenses, their accommodation, and indeed to the extent that they have to work beyond the regular hours, the payment for those sessions, all of those things are taken care of. And indeed, the relationship with the Cubans on the ground have been very good. The locals have worked well with them, and we have never really had any complaints in one way or the other. And most stay beyond 3 years, sometimes as much as almost 5 years.
So
this is not. So in other words, I mean, we respect human rights. We are signatories to the international conventions around that. That is primarily managed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, you know, we want to comply with all those rules. So if there's evidence to suggest that, and there's a need for any adjustment, then it's something we're prepared to look at for sure, because in keeping with our mandate to observe and to respect human rights. But like I say, the relationship as we know it has been cordial. The benefits have been tremendous, and we have not had any complaints to date from any of the Cuban nationals who have been here in the past, certainly since I've been minister. So that's as good as I know.
So just to understand, we pay the Cuban workers when they come here. They're compensated by the government purse of Jamaica, not the Cuban government.
No, we compensate them to some extent, to another extent, which I can't go into full details. To some extent, there's a part of the compensation package through the Cuban government and a part of the compensation package directly to the employees once they're here.
So you can't speak to the accusation levied by the U.S. State Department as to whether there is some kind of exploitative or compulsory.
No, I can't. There's a conversation that's taking place, and I would prefer to allow that conversation to be completed, which would allow a better understanding on all sides, and then try to find a resolution, whether it is to bring clarity to a situation or it is to make any adjustments to that situation. And again, we've had very cordial meetings to date, both on the Cuban side and on the discussions with the U.S. And I certainly have discerned a spirit of cooperation and willingness to look at all the issues, no hostility whatsoever, and that is positive. So I believe we'll try and find a way, and we just have to allow that process. So it wouldn't be wise to comment on any specifics around the process at this time, I think. Just to say that the relationship is good, has been beneficial, and indeed the relationship with the U.S. has been also very good. So it's really just to try and find a way to ensure that we can coexist.
And in the discussions, Minister, with the Cuban authorities, is it that from and through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you're trying to find out, how is it from their end, their compensation structure work, to see if what the United States is indicating, if there's any truth to that?
Well, a big part of any sort of positioning around these issues would be clarity and trying to understand why what exactly is being asked and how what is being asked relates to some of the conventions that we are signatories to. So I think that's where it has to start, even before we sort of lay any kind of conclusion on the matter. And I think that's where we are as of now, based on the conversations that have been taking place. So, you know, there are going to be positions held, and there will be counter positions also. What we have to do is to bring the conversations to the fore, and then, based on the understanding, we make decisions from there. And I think that's all we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. And you have also indicated that Jamaica is looking to other countries, such as the Philippines, India, Nigeria, as potential sources for healthcare workers. Have you placed a timeline for bringing in professionals from those countries, and how feasible it is to replace Cuban workers in the short term?
Well, first of all, I want to make it clear, because I think there was some possible mixed signals sent in my discussion in the Parliament, or certainly carried by the media, and your media was in particular, that we were kind of abandoning the Cuban arrangements and seeking alternative elsewhere. And I don't want that impression to be created, because, as I said earlier and said in the Parliament, we value that relationship and ideally would like to see that relationship preserved. I also said, and I'll say again, that long before this particular situation emerged, we had started to take steps to further expand our collaboration with bilateral partners. And it's not strange or unexpected, because from ever since going to the WHO in Switzerland, where our
Minister? Dr. Tufton? Oh, there. It seems we've lost the minister. Hopefully we can get him back. Well, Sanjay,
Hello?
Oh, Dr.
Yes, Minister. Yes, we're hearing you now.
No, I was saying that we have been lobbying for some time, Jamaica, around human resources and how we build capacity. And also, a big part of that is a convention that we all sign on to, where recruitment of healthcare workers that deprive countries of the ability to serve their constituents, their nationals, which in a sense Jamaica suffers from because of the mobility of labor and the offers that have been given to them from our neighbors, is a problem. And so we have to resort to alternative ways, and part of that is to collaborate with like-minded and other organizations or countries. And that's why the Philippines, Nigeria, India, and others have come up. So even with the Cubans, we have gaps that we need to fill. And hence, some of these arrangements had started long before. But certainly with these discussions, the primary objective is to preserve the relationship and preserve the benefits that we get, while still trying to expand on additional relationships in order to have a greater level of capacity as we build out our health institutions. So it's a strategic plan. It's not a reactionary plan that was conceived and is being implemented now.
And Minister, to clarify, the state, or the country I should say rather, that tends to absorb many of our migrating health professionals remains the United States?
Yes, and for obvious reasons. The U.S., the proximity to Jamaica is strong. The diaspora community is large. There is a lot of synergies that allows, the health system there at the level of the state to absorb more workers. Our workers are good workers. They're well trained. They're very, excellent at what they do. And of course, the enticement of, compensation and otherwise is very hard to compete with. So the U.S. remains the largest recruiter of our health personnel. But the UK and Canada are similarly so, and indeed the Caribbean, because there are Caribbean countries also that do the same. So we are really a net exporter of human resources and healthcare workers. So we train for the rest of the world. The challenge we face is that we don't train enough to retain recognizing the mobility that will take place. And part of the bottleneck of that is the infrastructure for clinical rotation and the faculty that's required to maintain the standards. So it's not that we can just get up and train more. We need more clinical space. So building out hospitals as we're doing now will help that. But collaboration across borders will also help. Hence the MOU with countries like the Philippines and others. So there is a strategic plan that is lined up to try and do this, and this is what we're pursuing. The issue of the U.S. has come up while we are pursuing this, which does heighten the need for it to be done, but is not the cause of why we're doing all of this.
But I brought that up because under that matter of cross collaboration, when the United States is essentially asking the Caribbean region and other territories that use the Cuban medical missions to forego that, are they or being put on the negotiation table an alternative that they're willing to provide?
Well, I mean, it's really up to a sovereign country to determine if they want to put alternatives or pursue their own path to their self-actualization. We would like to see some greater collaboration, and I've mooted that at the level of the multilateral entities, PAHO in Washington. We've had several meetings on it. I've done the same in Switzerland at the level of WHO. So, yes, we'd like to see a lot more collaboration. Unfortunately, I don't think we've seen enough. And hence some of the challenges we have, whether it is to provide some of the services that are required, not just for our locals, but for our visitors, or even for, other important functions that are necessary. So, the solution from my perspective, is that we need more collaboration, global collaboration. And I think COVID has taught us a very important lesson that we all have to recognize, that we are as strong as our weakest link. And the sea does not sufficiently guard us against health threats or large areas of land. And so it's going to be important for us to find a way. Now, having said that, they say all politics is local. We have to secure our own borders as a country and find ways to make it work. We are encouraging collaboration with institutions within the U.S. At the level of the state, at the level of the federal government. We have benefited in some ways from support, financial support, USAID, for example, to the extent that it used to support us. Right now it's on pause around things like HIV and so on. We have had other types of health-related collaboration. But in the area of human resources, outside of accessing training in hospital and institutions in the U.S., where we self-finance, that collaboration has not been as big as I certainly would like it to be, given that we are all at risk, given the proximity of each country with each other. Now, this Cuban issue could amplify that if the extreme is the result, where we can no longer have these workers. I don't think we're there yet, and I'm hoping we won't get there, because we have to take all the concerns expressed seriously. If in fact the challenges around that have been identified are real, then we have to find a way to address them. And as I said, both countries are friends of Jamaica, and both countries, with the relationship that we have, benefit Jamaica. And so a conversation is required, and that is happening now.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Minister, and clearly I don't want to cast aspersions or make any allegations. So this is essentially a worst-case what-if scenario, because this notion of exploitation of labor really rings a hollow, sour note here in Jamaica, where we have a strong tradition of labor laws and standing up for labor reform. If it is found, or if it is proven that there is a level of exploitation on the part of the Cuban government in these medical missions and this Cuban labor export program. Is the government of Jamaica simply willing to walk away from it?
So let me just say clearly that the relationship we have with the Cuban government and the Cuban workers who are here is an excellent one, and that the treatment as administered by the Jamaican government in relation to those Cubans who are working within our system is absolutely no different from the treatment of the Jamaican workers. And in fact, in some cases, maybe even better in terms of some of the amenities that are provided, as is expected for someone who is coming in. So housing, for example. And so there is absolutely there should be no second guessing that in terms of the labor laws and the treatment of our workers here from Cuba, that there is no discrimination whatsoever. I mean, we have up to this point not had any impression that there's exploitation as it relates to in Cuba, but again, a conversation is required based on what has been said. There are some international rules that are stipulated and that we are all signatories to. And so, that's what bilateral and multilateral relationships are about. And, Minister Johnson Smith, who leads the charge on that, is quite capable, and her team to assess. And we are working together, and we have had some meetings to that effect. So, I don't sense any hostility in the conversation that is taking place, and that's very encouraging to me. And it represents a lot of hope. So let's try and complete that before we draw conclusions.
But let's say, Minister, the restrictions, your conversations are had, and the U.S. insists that they're moving forward. If the restrictions take effect immediately, is there a game plan to prevent any major disruptions at our hospitals or at our clinics? Because we're talking about, as you indicated, close to 400 individuals.
Well, look at it this way. Because it's early days yet, I prefer not to assume these things. But as I said earlier, we have had a strategic plan which we're moving ahead with. I'm actually traveling to the Philippines, or should be traveling to the Philippines in another few weeks, to consolidate some of the conversations that took place with the minister who came to Jamaica and was very gracious, participated in the expo. And we have a signed MOU to pursue certain bilateral arrangements. We have had discussions similar with Nigeria, and in fact, we have approvals for some faculty to come in and nurses. I met with them last week. I met with the Indian High Commissioner this week. There are some conversations around that. There's a possibility I could be there also. The Honorable Prime Minister was there late last year. There was an excellent conversation around a range of things, including health. So the point I'm making is that, we are not going to surrender or give up in terms of efforts. And if it means a void is created, we will have to find a way to fill that void. And there's always a plan to try and address it. But again, I don't want to go there if I think there's enough encouragement to suggest that we can find a solution to maintain the current status quo, even while we seek to build out what we can based on those existing and future relationships.
A bit of a cheeky question, Minister. I suspect you won't answer this.
Well,
but
the
Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, has suggested he's willing to give up his visa to keep the Cubans there. Would you be willing to do the same?
But as I said, I don't believe in this kind of assumption. I'm not going to. What you're doing is inflaming. You damage a conversation and a negotiation by start extrapolating on extremities. I don't think it's a healthy part of a dialogue. I think that we avoid those kind of conclusions and focus on the discussions. So when that bridge presents itself, we will cross it one way or the other. A lot of the decisions that we make around these things, clearly, all the critical decisions are made by a cabinet led by the Honorable Prime Minister. So I would never venture to try and make these conclusions on my own, because clearly it's not up to me alone. And
the
I
properly
have a lot of
diplomatic answer, Dr. Tuft.
I have a lot of confidence in the executive arm of government. So that's a decision that we take collectively. But as of now, I'm not there, and I don't see any evidence to suggest that we will get there. We will continue to deal with these discussions.
Understood, Dr. Tufton. Thank you for joining us.
All the best.
All the best, Dr. Tufton. We're up on the break. Let's take the break. We have the Watchman coming up next, and then after that, we'll open the phone lines to take your calls.
Apply for your Sagicor Bank Preferred Prepaid MasterCard today. Load your remittances for everyday spending. Receive cash transfers from any local bank. The time by Sagicor Bank is...
It's 7:33.
The Watchman. Exploring issues shaping our society, government, and business. Provocative, unconventional. Dr. Henley Morgan is The Watchman.
Good evening. Who is responsible when investment decisions go wrong? By its very nature, investment is a blind man's game. One cannot see at the beginning the precise result that will be achieved at the end. Although investment requires a measure of blind faith, it does not follow that the practice is without rationale or logic. Conducting proper due diligence decreases the odds of falling prey to corrupt interlopers. There are some fundamental questions to which the wise investor will seek answers before parting with his or her money. These include the following. 1. Who are the people I am about to hand my money over to? How fit and proper are they to be investing money on the behalf of other people? 2. If something should go wrong, whom do I hold accountable? Is there a legal recourse open to me? 3. How financially viable is the entity? Is it adequately capitalized? 4. What is the legal status of the entity in whose name the individuals I am dealing with are operating? Are the activities it is engaging in sanctioned by and in compliance with regulations of the Financial Services Commission, FSC? 5. What are the security and other risks I'm exposing myself to with the decision to invest? 6. What are the sources of the funds coming into the entity? Are there mechanisms to guard against so-called dirty money contaminating the pool? 7. How sound is the governance and management structure of the investment entity? How proficient is the backroom operations at managing and reporting on large, complex transactions? 8. Is the payment of interest, dividends, capital gains, etc., dependent on money paid in by new investors joining like in a Ponzi scheme? Or are such payments made out of net interest being earned by the entity? 9. How much involvement will I have in decisions concerning how my money will be invested or traded? Will the banker, broker, or trader be making decisions that are rightly mine to make? 10. Am I being unduly influenced by the salesman's spiel? That is, sweet mouth. Has greed entered into the equation? In the outpouring of indignation toward the discredited Stocks and Security Limited, SSL, especially relating to losses suffered by one of our iconic athletes who got burnt in the alleged scam, there have been much finger pointing, blame finding, and even politicizing of the sordid affair. Often overlooked is the issue of personal responsibility. When the SSL debacle first came to public notice, Olympian Asafa Powell sounded a warning to his compatriots in sports. His words should be heeded by every investor. This is what he said. I quote, "Be smart with your investment money and vigilantly watch over your accounts." Think on these things.
Produced by Agency for Inner City Renewal, AIR, and recorded in the Jamming Studio, Trenchtown, a breath of fresh air bringing change to the inner city.
Welcome back, listeners. As I said, we're taking your calls. The numbers are 630-937-124 and 618-8255. Come chat with us.
Coveside Concert Series presents Timeless. It happens on March 29 at Plantation Cove, St. Anne, featuring international superstar Dionne Warwick and more stars Myrna Hague, Queen Marcia Griffiths, and Dwayne Stevens. Timeless, March 29. Showtime is 8 p.m. and tickets are now available at Fesco, Fontana Pharmacy, Plantation Smokehouse, and online at coveside.aitix.com.
Need to speak with an officer from the National Land Agency's Land Titles Division? The NLA's QME Flex appointment system allows you to consult with an officer from the Land Titles Division online or over the phone from the comfort of your home or office. Book your appointment today at nla.gov.jm. For more information, call 876-750-5263. The National Land Agency. One agency, one goal to serve you better.
Tune in to Cliff Views Online from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. as we broadcast live from the annual Speed Networking event at the Montego Bay Convention Center Thursday, March 13. This one-day event brings together top decision makers from local supplier companies and leading tourism entities like hotels, attractions, restaurants, and more. This year's event will feature a variety of manufacturers in categories like entertainment, furniture and bedding, food and beverage, fresh produce, aromatherapy, and so much more. So tune in to Cliff Views Online from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Come and engage in some speed networking at the Montego Bay Convention Center on March 13. All this and more only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the Tourism Enhancement Fund.
Welcome back, listeners. Before we go to the first call, I just want to say briefly, Sanjay, on that discussion with Dr. Tufton. I mean, I can start with the simple fact, the Jamaican proverb, jackass at the world not level. And it's interesting to see an allegation of exploitation of labor coming from the United States when much of its manufacturing capacity and much of the economic boon that it benefits from is cheap Chinese labor, which we cannot pretend is not exploited. There's a reason why there's so many factories in China that benefit U.S. businesses in their own country, because the labor is considerably cheaper, and it's cheaper for a reason. And it's a reason that they can't ignore. Well, it seems they can't ignore it when it is very convenient for them. And for them to level this accusation of exploitation on the part of the Cuban government. But I'm putting that aside because Jamaica has a strong labor tradition. The genesis of our two main political parties, the People's National Party and the JLP, comes from that trade union.
Yes.
And from that trade union tradition. And the two most, I would say, revered political figures in our country, Michael Manley and Bustamante, strong trade unionists. So when these allegations of exploitation, not here in Jamaica, but on the fact that we are bringing in workers that the U.S. claim are exploited by their own government, it does give me pause. And I do want it as an issue to be addressed and looked into, because even if I would just say that the U.S. is being hypocritical in their assertions, I think we need to look at our own house and clean our own yard, and we need to understand if that is the case and act upon it, regardless of visa restrictions being bandied about or not. So that is where I stand on that.
I think there's a much bigger conversation as it relates to just generally the geopolitical issues that face us, and considering that those of us within the Caribbean, we're smaller and we we sometimes have to give to countries like the United States because of their dominance and the problem that we find ourselves in. And I also find it so ironic that the United States is the one that is taking so many of our healthcare workers and leave us in this quandary. And now putting a restriction, so to speak, on us to say, hey, you can't take those Cubans, you have to look elsewhere, is a challenge that exists. And sometimes the situation that the US may put forward may not necessarily even be real. But what do you then do? Because the restriction comes with, oh, we're going to take away your visa. And many individuals, the visa is a sacred thing for them. So it's a very difficult position that the government finds themselves in. And we can even go back to Venezuela and what happened with Venezuela and how the government of Jamaica had to cut ties with Venezuela because the US indicated that they, in a sense, can't do business with any country that is doing business with Venezuela.
It's a very difficult situation diplomatically, Sanjay, and I agree with you on that. That unfortunately, in the very uneven world we live in, the piper is still piper still calls it. What's its name again? He who pays the piper calls the tune. So unfortunately, that is still the world we live in, and I really sometimes just find the hypocrisy just amazing. But at the end of the day, there's still the principle that we in Jamaica believe in strong labor laws, and I would like to see them followed.
And let us say, Siobhan, that we have done our checks through the necessary diplomatic channels, and then it comes up to be false. If the US insists that it is so, we still have to comply.
And that is jackass at the world level. But Papa Nana, you're the first caller.
Yes, sir. How do you do?
We're good. How are you?
Well, from here on the voice, I try to make myself all right too. But I have two things here to find out from you.
Yes.
One of them, I know that you are not a legal mind person, right? Am I right?
No, we're not lawyers.
Right. So, but I know that both of you have a CSD degree.
What is a CSD degree?
That's what I'm wondering.
You are very intelligent. A CSD degree means common sense degree.
I would hope most Jamaicans have that, though, Papa Nana.
All right. Nice of you. You said most Jamaicans. All right. Listen to me now. As I said, I know you are not a legal man, but you have CSD. There are too often, I notice, a trend in Jamaica where a lot of high-profile cases go to court, went an appeal, and it has been thrown out because the people who sit on the board, on the panel, said that the judges erred. So they have no alternative but to set the person, the accused, free because the judges erred. Right? Are you following me?
I'm following you.
Yes.
And it's too often now that we heard of that. The judges erred. No. What kind of punishment you think should give out to those judges? If they should just get a scot-free so because they erred, are they not supposed to know the law? Where they are supposed to follow the law and to know when something is wrong?
One of the things, Papa Nana, I will say is the law sometimes is left up to interpretation. And how the judge may have interpreted that specific section of the act or whatever, a lawyer could always come back and argue it before a different judge and they come to a different conclusion. It's just all part of it. I don't think that we should, weigh so heavily on the judge having made mistakes because they're human beings, right? But again, the law is left up to interpretation. I can go back as a lawyer and argue it before another judge, and the judge see it differently from the previous trial judge.
And you have to bear in mind, though, Papa Nana, remember, you said high-profile cases, but there's a reason many of those cases are high-profile and why they end up at the Court of Appeal. I'm assuming the majority of judgments passed at the parish court level go unchallenged.
But, mister, this is a recurring decimal.
in a few cases, Papanan. And
I wouldn't say the recurring decimal.
And they're
there are a few
high
cases.
profile for a reason.
Yeah.
And remember, the judge does his best interpretation of the law when he passes out his judgment. And would you want a situation in which his judgment is not open to some review or some critique by another body who believes, as a human, as the judge is, can make a mistake in terms of his understanding of the law?
Mm-hmm.
No. I don't say it can't make a mistake, but it is too often now, man.
Oh, you call too often? Because how many cases you can recall that you're seeing that particular issue?
Anyway, let me leave that part there. Let me raise that part there. I want you to try and see if you can get me a survey for me tomorrow, because there is somebody who called me. I don't know if you have heard about some people that he had laid off from St. Williams Grant Park. He had fired because he said that they are getting the corporation money for and not working for it.
I've not heard of that one. I'm not sure of that one.
Well, I heard of it today. Somebody called me and asked me to put it to you people. And the person is saying, I said to the person, try and get any radio station, not nationwide especially, and explain to them that you are so-and-so, because that person is saying to me that he would like to see Mayor Scott level the equation, because it is because of political victimization why they was fired, because they know of other people elsewhere who is connected to Mayor Scott. I don't have no proof. That's why I tell them to call you people, and they are still working.
Well, Papanal, you did the right thing. Ask them to reach out to us, and and if there is something to pursue there, we will pursue it. But beyond that, I have not heard any such allegation made against the KSAMC in terms of political victimization on that matter.
I saw the story though, where he indicated that over 30 people at St. William Grant Park had to be cut, as some employees had been signing in and they're working elsewhere. I saw that story yesterday, actually.
Exactly. And they are saying that it's political victimization because they know of other people who connected to them who did not go through that fate. But anyway, I want them just to call you people and tell them. I don't want to say something that I can't prove.
Yeah.
All right, Papa.
All right.
And back to this one last thing, the budget yesterday, man, was classic.
You like it?
Yes, man. I just want them to do something for the pensioner like us. I just want to hear something about that.
All right, Papa Dada.
Yes, man. And take
all
care.
The best.
Good.
Good. Who do we have?
Chris, good evening.
Hi,
good
Chris.
evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, Siobhan.
Good evening.
Sanjay.
And to Sanjay, my nationwide family, who we chat on YouTube from time to time. I can't be always there, but I know there's a family of nationwide listeners there. I am happy to get on. I think I have about 74 attempts to call nationwide from last week.
Oh dear.
And I get on this evening. I want a line like Papa Nana one.
I don't know if Papa Nana has a special line.
Papa Nana. Tell Papa Nana must go make Mama Nana teach him how to get a YouTube. Go on YouTube and make a text. Cause I can't send my number on here. But I hear he tell you that you are not legal mind. But as a 61 going 62-year-old, I am not a lawyer myself. But I have a degree, QBE. You know that one?
What's that? No.
Qualified by experience.
Okay.
Having spent 37 years in the Jamaica Constabulary.
All right.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. Qualified by experience. Right. I have 2 points. First, I hear everybody was, and in the YouTube chat, you could see them talking about why PJ come out at this hour. But you must remember that Mark Golding, I believe it was in St. Thomas. I might be wrong about the parish. But when an election was coming up the last year, he said he wants everybody to come out, even the dead. So if he's calling out the dead, he will be calling out the lame, the sick, and the lazy. and we have Mr. Patricia coming out and talking about his time. That is good. When I recall, we used to talk about we have 3 months of NIR in savings that can sustain the country. Now Jamaica has gone 5.6 billion in savings without any new taxes for 9 years. I was talking to some friends today and I reminded them that when budget used to read back in my days as a boy, cigarettes would be hidden, rum would be hidden, and motor vehicle insurance would go up, and all of this. Your license would go up, and people just listen. What next? And they die with that.
There was this expectation, and I remember growing up as a boy, thinking, what is it that the government is going to come with for us to pay more taxes on? So there was that expectation at all times. So which is why when you hear the government talk about no new taxes, and those of us who have the benefit of history, we celebrate when we hear no new taxes, because for a very long time, every budget cycle, we were expecting more taxes.
Indeed. I remember at one point when they couldn't tax anything else, they taxed the Ancat man downtown. That time I used to clean up Bedford Street, Orange Street, and all of that.
I remember that particular debacle.
It's Brown Burke, who I had good meeting with, good relationship as a police officer in charge of downtown. When they tax the car, they put a license plate on them.
I recall that. I recall that.
I want to tell Jamaica people that they are not to leave what is good before them and go to the unknown. The unknown, I don't want to go. Mr. Perkins always said, you don't know what is over on the other side, it's better you stay here right now. I want the people to stay the course and ensure that their children can go to school. I tell my kids, I go and help you the first year in university. There's facility. One man asked me, I was talking to a former colleague of mine on Saturday, and he said to me that the country needs human development. He's not seeing that. Whilst you're seeing road infrastructure. I said to him, you know that the government is paying young boys to go to school now. If I am in this little cook shop, right now they can come and certify me heart. Why are you going to give away certain fee and certain? It's like a woman have a good husband, good boyfriend, and one next little guy come from around the corner and tell him something. I go and ask the people at Jamaica. I will be there on the street with them to tell the story on behalf of what I am seeing now. I remember when we, coming from the Special Constabulary, had to take the government with three crown council to the Privy Council to get housing allowance when there was something right before their eyes. I don't know how they couldn't read it. And that's why I'm kind of fearful of the CCJ, because there is a section in the law then that says a special constable shall be entitled to all rights, privileges, and immunity as a member of the regular force. And Mr. Knight, he said, if you want housing, come over Jordan. You know what he called Jordan? The JCF. And from that day on, we went to all the way to Privy Council with Danfoot and Lord Gifford. As a man leave training school now, him getting housing allowance once he's a member of the JCF. You understand? The next thing I want to big up the Minister Favour Williams. I'm going to cut it short because I know a lot of persons. I feel sometimes offended when somebody takes too much time. But because I have 74 missed calls. Favour Williams did her best. And when you do your best, angel in heaven can do better. You understand? Right. When I listened to that lady's speech, I said, look here, this lady connect with me when she talk about carrying water and hiding Qatar. I hear some of them over the other side trying to call the name Qatar, and they pronounce it English way. They buying water, bottled water here and there. We have to carry water sometimes. You have to box it out from out a cow pan and box where they leave them and carry water to go bathe or tidy, as she say, to go to school. You understand? I am seeing right now happening between Brownstown and down into Retreat water pipeline coming after 50 odd years when never come here. Spark supposed to be here. All I want them to do is speed up some payment for those workers who sacrifice their time right now. The payment is a little bit late. I know when these things happen, how the bureaucrats can hold it. But I just want that to be speeded up so that the men can go out there and we get the water in the area. Make people say, look here, this is now bag of mouth. Put your money where your mouth is. Understand? And don't change course.
All right. Thank you, Chris, for that. So we have to wrap up there, listeners. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Nationwide at 5. Thanks to our super producer, Dana Davey, our technical operator, Andrew the Glenn, the Bugs Anderson, or capable editor, Cara Powell, who leads my friends and compatriots in the news and production department. And special congratulations and thanks to Favour Williams for joining us this evening and for her very, very, very strong maiden budget presentation. I'm Siobhan Campbell.
And my name is Sanjay Lewis, wishing for you a wonderful evening. Good night.